for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is the annual tradition that is your Uncle Andre's Yule log. For years and years, this has been a show that I've always done, always enjoyed doing, and always volunteered to do. And in fact, it was the first ever show I did on Talk. I can't remember how many years ago that was. Now listen, we've got a list of stories. We're unhappy about the fact that Brighton and Hove Museum have banned Father Christmas. We're really angry about the amount of money being given this Christmas to migrant hotels rather than being given to all of those servicemen and indeed homeless people who need that support and are our own people. But you know, more than anything else, the most important thing is this, to remember, it's over. The shops are closed, the presents are wrapped. Whatever you do not have now, you are not going to get. So I congratulate you. And as I always say at the beginning of this show, I believe in Father Christmas, and I'll tell you why. Because up and down the country, an enormous amount of effort has gone in, scrimping and saving, working hard, doing your best, you know, and people have made major sacrifices in order to ensure that in a few hours' time, and mums and dads, it will be a few short hours, children across this nation are going to have a gift of wonderment. So if you are in fact Father Christmas and you're watching this, I want to congratulate you, because everybody knows the hard work and effort that goes into this. As I say, the scrimping and saving, you know, the extra hours put in at work, all of that. I think it's just a marvellous thing to do. And as I say, at about 3 in the morning, the kids will be up and you will realise the fruits of all your effort, and everything will seem completely worth it. Now, I'm joined by Phil Dave. He's my co-host. Just to explain, Asher Gould is on a permanent contract of employment. Therefore, he doesn't get paid extra for doing religious holidays, so he never turns up. Look, we could lie, Phil, couldn't we? We could lie.
Well, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm here.
Aren't you?
Of course not.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do.
It's my present to you. No, that's an insult.
We're going to give you a chocolate. Now, Phil, I just want to say one thing.
Do I look like a Quality Street person?
I don't know. What do you look like?
I think I'm more Hotel Chocolat.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Safe word, did you not think that Phil would use it? Oh, I'm sorry, this is Andre Walker's Yule Log, where we have an emergency word to say we're in danger or the studio's being attacked. And who knew that up until 5 minutes ago, that phrase was hotel chocolate?
No, don't say it again.
No, we've changed it now.
Oh, okay.
We've changed it to mugwaffin or something. Phil, this is Andre Walker's Yule Log, and we did the introduction. I'm not going to do it again, but I'm going to ask you this. Look, we're going to talk to you about everything that's happened this year. You're still wearing your dog tag. I do want to talk about those people who are out defending freedom this Christmas, but I do also want to talk about the way that Brighton and Hove museums have banned Father Christmas because they want to decolonise Santa Claus. They say he's too white and too male. I mean...
Well, the clue's in the title, Father Christmas. He is male. Hate to tell you. And as far as the idea of him being too white, well, historically and traditionally, he has been a white person in the West, and exactly in the same way that in other parts of the world, he reflects that society.
Exactly right.
Those people, those members of society there. I don't actually genuinely see a problem with that. And I think where we need to be really careful with this kind of nonsense, and it is nonsense, unfortunately, first of all, if you pick on Christmas to try and highlight your wokeism, then you're just picking on the wrong subject, seriously, because it's ridiculous. It's actually quite an insult.
But let me ask you, we've talked all year about stuff like this. Are these lot actually bothered? Or do they sit round going, oh, do you know what? Let's try and offend someone and come up with something.
Well, they're stirrers. They're stirrers of a certain variety that I'm not allowed to say on radio, but they are stirrers. And I would say as well that what really bothers me is that actually what this causes is further division, because every single time someone who happens to be of a white background will turn around and say, oh, we feel so guilty that we are so white or something's white. All that does is actually further damages the integration efforts of those of us who genuinely don't see colour.
Yes.
That's what's so stupid, is that they've got this bizarre perspective that says that someone who leans to the right is the world's biggest racist, and yet it's always the socialists on the extreme left who are the ones who highlight colour.
But I've made this point multiple times. Let me say this to you. When I did That Was the Woke That Was, the producer used to sit there and think of things that he could say, is it true or false that somebody did this? A good example is it true or false that there's a campaign to stop cruelty to oysters? Now, bear in mind, oysters have no brain and no nervous system, therefore you can't be cruel to them. And what was amazing was, by the end of the year, the things that he had literally sat and made up, most of them had become true. Now, I don't believe people were necessarily watching our show, but
I watched it.
No, I mean the lefties, but the craziest things that you could think of, somebody advocates. Like, as an example, did activists try and shut down Mrs. Doubtfire on the grounds it's transphobic? Right, yes, somebody did. Oh, what was some of the other stuff that, just nonsense? Oh, yeah, oh, yes, lest we forget, the person who tried to... I mean, I don't mean to be awful. Somebody tried to stop cruelty to lice and said, don't stop your kids having lice because it's cruel.
Well, I mean, they sound like the biggest nitwit of them all.
Hey.
But I would argue seriously that I believe that there needs to be, in order to put a genuine stop to this, I get the whole argument of freedom of speech and I'm all for it, and make no mistake, but I genuinely think that the only way we're going to counter this insanity is to actually have a law that says, unless a person who is actually from a particular minority that they claim to be offended on behalf of, then their offence won't be taken seriously. Because exactly the same way, right? I give the classic example. I've made it absolutely no hidden secret on many occasions that I'm of Jewish heritage, and I can't for the life of me, I'm not going to say it because I know it is a banned word, I can't for the life of me understand who said they were offended by the Y word, for example. Now, I won't say that because I know that people do take offence to it and I don't know who those people are. But I will say one thing, I'm Jewish and I don't take offence to it.
No.
I've never seen it as an offensive word, and I don't care if someone uses it.
But I think the craziest thing that I ever heard about at Christmas, and this is not on my list, but I do want to remind us, right, so that big campaign, it's awful what happens to dwarves at Christmas with all the pantomimes. Now, at the end of the day...
You're allowed to say dwarves anymore.
I've never, well, short person, whatever it is.
I don't know, that's exactly the thing, is I don't know if we're even allowed to say that anymore.
Well, Warwick Davis does, so I'm sorry. But now, ultimately, I don't know, you know, what it's like to be in that position, what it's like to be a dwarf or whatever. But as it happens, there's a bloke who works in Borough Market, and here's what he told me. He said, I take like 1 month off at Christmas to do a pantomime because I'm a dwarf, and all of my mates do as well. And in that month, I get paid £8,000. Now,
Nice.
he said, now fundamentally, most people that I know would sit there and go, do you know what? I can make £8,000 in 1 month if I do this. It's not particularly difficult, and they all get involved. And he said, what has happened this year is everyone's gone, oh, it's offensive for him to do that. And he said, so what happened is they took £8,000 off me. And someone sat round going, oh, have we struck out for equality? And he said, well, it's just cost me money.
I'd sue the wokies.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Why not, indeed? It's loss of income. He should be entitled to sue them.
OK, so, look, I want to ask you before we go any further, because I do think it's really important to talk about those people who defend freedom. You are still wearing your dog tag. Explain.
So, to anyone who hasn't seen the dog tag before, it's in 2 languages. The top half is in Hebrew. The bottom half is in English. The bottom half says, bring them home now. And the top half translates roughly to our hearts are in Gaza. And the reason I wear this is because it is for those who are, and I say are because it is still present tense, being held hostage by Hamas. Because many people think because the living hostages are now freed, that side of things is over, but it's actually not. There is still, on the last count, 1 remaining deceased person still being held captive in Gaza by Hamas, and it is nothing more than psychological warfare. No, I'm not.
Look, Phil, I don't want to offend you in any way, but I just want to be deadly serious about this. Explain to me the argument in favour of obsessing over dead bodies. You know what? I've put that like pretty brutally, but explain why.
Because I obsess over the living. Because to every dead body held in Gaza, there was a whole family who was mourning that person but couldn't mourn them properly because the remains of their loved ones, who they must have sort of gone through their life, whether they were obviously older or younger than them, their life or whoever's life, they must have gone through that life loving that person and not being able to give them a proper send-off because these murdering, disgusting scumbags who run the Gaza Strip wanted to play psychological warfare. That's why.
I suppose, actually, my problem is I've not explained myself fully. Allow me to explain myself. One thing that I strongly object to, and I've never been in this position, so I can only talk as a political commentator rather than somebody, who's had a family member who's been taken hostage. I do worry when Israel exchanges live terrorists for dead bodies.
Oh, now, so that is actually a separate argument that I have to say I completely agree. Because I understand why they did that for those who are living, but I actually think in the grand scheme of things, when we got, and this is going to sound terrible, because obviously it wasn't my family, thank God, that was affected by it, and look, it might be even a bit hypocritical of me because I wear the dog tag, as you rightly identify, but I never understood why they actually carried on fighting in the name of those being held hostage, because in the grand scheme of things, you were talking about 20 living hostages, and I'm delighted that all those 20 are now home, thank goodness. But 20 living hostages, and you don't know how many members of the IDF were killed in the process to get there, how many lives were disrupted, how many people's mental health were affected in mainland Israel because this war carried on, and not to mention that actually, in the grand scheme of things, the amount of money and the cost of living crisis that continues to escalate in Israel, all of this in the name of 20 individuals versus millions of individuals who would be affected by the war carrying on. So I can easily see that argument. It sounds heartless, it's completely heartless, but at the same time, I get it. I understand why that is an argument.
I think the most difficult thing that Israel had to do, and I know that there are friends of mine who say they would do it, and there are friends of mine who say they would not do it. But what I will lay out to you now, I think for the Israelis to do would be one of the most egregious things in their history for fairly obvious reasons. The reality is they could not fully penetrate the tunnels, and the Hamas leadership was in the tunnels. In my view, I'll just come out with this. There was an argument for gassing the tunnels with the Israeli hostages inside. Now, I appreciate that no Israeli Prime Minister could gas Jewish hostages and continue. I accept that. But fundamentally, the thing that worries me about Israel is this. I fear that the leadership of Hamas are still around, and we still haven't got to that, the poison right in the middle of it.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting argument, and one of which that you're right, in terms of how it looks, it's not going to look very good for the Prime Minister of Israel to use a sort of deadly gas to go and destroy his enemy, because of course
it would be more egregious to do it in Israel than anywhere else.
Everyone knows what that's going to be compared to. However, what I would say that there was a serious contemplation for, and I actually do still believe that there is still an argument for it, is that they were talking about flooding the tunnels.
Yeah.
They were talking about sort of just letting in water from the surrounding body of water to flood it. And then there was concerns over what that would do to the structural soundness, if you like,
the
of
substructure,
the Gaza Strip.
Yeah,
because they were worried that would weaken.
It could. The Gaza Strip could collapse.
It could sink underneath it. So they were worried about that. So I understood that argument as well. But I do have to suggest that, as unpleasant as it might sound, and people are going to say, oh, he's all in favour of colonisation and all in favour of oppression, or whatever other stupid words they want to use. Settlements, I think, is the other word they use. The truth is that for as long as the Gaza Strip exists without some sort of Western leadership at its helm, bearing in mind that pretty much the only Western leadership in that part of the world is Israel, without some sort of Western leadership, this is never going to end.
I'll tell you what amazes me about it, and I do think there's an element of I want it because of the Jews or whatever, but let's be clear, if I fought you over Gaza, if I won, you'd have to keep it. I mean, the people that are living there, and I don't want to be, disparaging, but you think to yourself, oh, for God's sake, move. And I know people are going to say that's disgusting, that's their land, but there comes a point where you go, oh, look, to be honest with you, is this place worth retaining?
Well, this is the funny thing, is you say that it's their land, but it's kind of no more their land than anyone else's, because actually Gaza Strip, like the West Bank, also known as Judea and Samaria, is disputed territory, and it has been disputed territory way before Israel was reborn in the 1940s. And it was actually one of the reasons, there's a lot of people don't realise the history of this region, one of the reasons why the so-called Palestinian flag, and I say so-called because it is not the Palestinian flag. If you look at the flag of Palestine that was, it's very different indeed.
Yes.
But the so-called Palestinian flag that we see now, the reason why that looks like the Jordanian flag is because before Israel was reborn, the Jordanians were disputing it with Egypt.
Yes.
There was an ongoing. It was part of the Ottoman Empire and all that. Like, it was a massive dispute going on in that part of the world. So way before Israel came back.
But what happens? Look, Gary has kind of said this. Gary's been in touch from Glasgow, and he said, look, pro-Palestinian protests have brought Oxford Circus to a complete standstill, screeching, stop killing babies at shoppers. Look, he says, it's Christmas Eve, leave people alone. Look, I'll tell you one thing that I felt when they wanted to cancel Remembrance Sunday in exchange for a Gaza protest. I genuinely feel, and you can like this or not like this, that there are people who've come as migrants to this country who, throughout this whole Israel-Gaza thing, have taken the view that their beliefs that come from wherever they came from in the world are more important than Britain. I am going to be genuine with you. Gaza and Israel are not the #1 political issue in Britain.
Correct.
Ordinary British people are much more concerned about the NHS, they're much more concerned about schools, they're much more concerned about the cost of living crisis, and yet...
Migration.
And I'm going to say this quite explicitly, because it is a touchstone issue for the Muslim community, there is an expectation that everybody in Britain must accept that it is the most important issue in the world. I don't accept it is the most important issue in the world. I don't know a great deal about Israel, don't know a great great deal about the IDF, but it seems to me that if someone launches a terror attack against you, you have a right to eradicate those terrorists, and I'm not that bothered about debating it.
I'm going to let you into a little secret, and this is going to blow the last 2 and a bit years completely and utterly out the water. The West can discuss the Middle East as much as they want. Israel won't care what you think.
Yeah.
And doesn't care what you... And rightly doesn't care what you think, by the way. Furthermore, I'll tell you one of the biggest differences, and this is where I think you need... This is, I think, a very easy way to gauge. You mentioned about Remembrance Sunday there, and I think this is a good way of understanding the situation if you don't quite get your head around it just yet. I could guarantee if you offered pro, and I've never understood why anyone has to be pro-Israeli. I've never heard of pro-French or pro-German. But anyway, if you offered pro-Israeli protesters the chance to protest on Remembrance Sunday instead of Remembrance Sunday, they'd say no. If you offered pro-Palestinians the chance to protest on Remembrance Sunday instead of Remembrance Sunday, they'd say yes.
Yeah, it's just this fundamental.
Simple as.
It's just this fundamental belief that my political opinion is more important than yours. I mean, ultimately, and maybe I'm wrong to do this, but you know, the ethnic cleansing of Christians from Bethlehem is not something that I would put at #1 on the BBC News at 6 o'clock. Maybe I should, but it doesn't cross people's minds. I guess it's something we're concerned about, but it's not #1. And you go, oh, you know, Gaza this and Gaza that. And I also think the other thing that upsets me about all of this is the great sort of... the way it's fashionable to care about Gaza. It's fashionable, isn't it?
Of course it is. That's all it is.
I have bored...
It's a trend.
I have bored my audience shedless with this by saying... Who is going to stand up and create a decent government in Gaza? Who is going to say there needs to be independent courts? Who's going to say there needs to be judicial oversight? Who's going to say there needs to be independent elections? Who says there's going to be proper journalistic and academic freedoms? Nobody's going to say that. What people are saying is, this is their land and Hamas have a right. I am telling you, the biggest victims of them all are the Palestinians living under Hamas. Nobody's had it worse than them. And as I've said before, Phil, they build the largest bunker system in the world and don't let the civilians into it. What they actually do is stick primary school children at the entrance to the you know, terror
Weapons
holes,
store,
weapons store, in the hope the Israelis might accidentally kill them so they can film it and stick it on social media.
Absolutely.
It's morally bankrupt. And Greta Thunberg's going, this is good. I mean, it's just... there's very few things that is worse than human sacrificing a primary school child so you can stick it on the internet in order to galvanise political support.
I couldn't agree with you more if I tried. I personally believe that the irony of all of this is that had Israel been allowed to properly annex the Gaza Strip all those years ago, and I say properly because they withdrew in 2005, but it was never properly annexed. It was sort of like here and there. It was sort of like blurred lines, if you like. But if they'd been allowed to properly annex the Gaza Strip all those years ago, the absolute irony is that those who identify as Palestinian would have had a much better and much more peaceful life than they do now. Not those who want to cause trouble. Let me be really clear on that, because there are people in Judea, Samaria, or the West Bank, or whatever you want to call it, who continuously try and fight the authorities. They are the ones who get into trouble and end up sometimes getting killed.
People, listen, my producer has told me that even though you're all sat there with the sherry and a mince pie, you want to talk about some serious issues, and I'm going to talk about the most serious issue that has to be talked about at the end of this year. I'm going to ask you an incendiary question and see what you think of this. Do you believe that the government of this country has accepted that the eradication of British Judaism is a price worth paying for uncontrolled immigration? I mean, have they sat there?
I don't think they've put 2 and 2 together. If they have, then that's very worrying indeed.
But it seems to me they've sat there and gone, look, we're really concerned about anti-Semitism, but to be fair, that's the price you've got to pay if you want to have a multicultural society. It seems to me that's what they've said. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong.
Look, I guess that first of all, what we need to try and understand is what the definition of multiculturalism is. That in itself is a bit of a problem, because there are some people who believe that multiculturalism is nothing to do with the culture, but maybe more to do with the religion. Well, I call that multi-faith. Yeah. And if you, then there are some who go a bit more sort of surface value than that. There are loads of different ways in which people define multiculturalism. And to my mind, multiculturalism is taking, quite literally, the culture of a country. Well, the culture of this country has always been ridiculous manners, tea at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with cucumber sandwiches, going down to the pub with your friends, and all of that malarkey, right? That's the culture of Britain, possibly whilst having some fish and chips in the most appalling weather. You then go to other countries where their culture includes the sort of the marrying off of girls as young as 9 years old and all sorts of other strange rituals that mean something to them. That is their culture.
Yes.
If you define multiculturalism as allowing that culture to come to Britain, which couldn't be further from that if you tried, well then guess what? Multiculturalism is not going to work. What can work, and does work, and absolutely works in other countries, because I've seen it firsthand, is multi-faith. If you have people of different faiths who are allowed to practice whatever religion they want to do, as long as it does not get in the way of others, or it doesn't dictate to others that they must follow that faith, then, and only then, it works.
Now, before we go to the break, I just want to say one thing to you. My brother holds the bronze Guild of St. Stephen medal. I hold the silver Guild of St. Stephen medal. My mother was a Catholic Eucharistic minister. My brother was the deputy head chorister of Liverpool, and we all went to the Liverpool Cathedral Catholic School, St. Edward's College, and my dad was the first non-Catholic to be offered to have his feet washed by a Catholic bishop. And my brother went to St. Benet's Hall, Oxford, the Catholic College of Oxford University. I am the Catholic to end all Catholics. And nonetheless, I will give you this piece of religious advice, and please take it with you. Do not go to midnight mass at the Brompton Oratory. 2.5 hours of Latin. I mean, it's just dreadful. There is nothing that will knock your faith out of you more than spending hour after hour being tortured in that place with pretentious Latin speaking. Oh my God, please, look, I'm sorry. I don't want to diss my own religious denomination, but by God, when I went for Maya Tuzi's conversion, 4 hours of Latin, honestly, I'll tell you. So
Some people like that.
No, they don't. Who likes that?
Well, I don't know them personally.
Who's into that? Everyone pretends to like it. And also, they all pretend to be able to speak Latin. Shh, they can't. OK, we'll be back straight after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is the show that is known as Uncle Dre's Yule Log. Are you enjoying the Yule Log so far?
Absolutely. This is very festive. What more? How much more festive can you possibly get than talking about the war in the Middle East?
No, do you know what they said to me?
Well, they put a festive spin on it on the Sky and BBC all through today. You know.
Look, I'm up for having a laugh, you know me.
Yeah.
But I've been told that the number one thing that what people want tonight is just to be reminded of how bad this country is, and there's nothing worse than this. You're going to be like stressed Eric in terms of how angry you are about this. Okay, tomorrow, you, the British taxpayer, will pay £5.3 million to house illegal migrants in the UK. This December, congratulations, you'll be spending £166 million on illegal migrants. Now, I'll tell you one thing that happens, Phil, and I don't know if this happened to you before today, but there are people who watch and listen to this show who've got loads of money, and there's people who are in the middle, and there's some people who are really struggling. And I guarantee you there will be people watching and listening to this show who say, do you know something? I'm really struggling this Christmas. I can't afford to put the heating on. My house has got mould. You know, I can't afford presents for all my kids. And they'll be sat there saying, why the bloody hell is money that was put aside for British people through tax and social security, why is it being given to people from abroad? There will be people who will turn around and say, why are there ex-servicemen on the street whilst we can house all of these migrants? And I have to say to you, I do not believe the solution to Syria's problem is for every Syrian to move to Britain, but equally, charity has to begin at home. People just feel furious that they see migrants being housed, but not their own people. And I'll tell you what upsets me the most. All of this, oh, human rights. Why is it never you that gets anything? Why is it always, you know, some criminal? Why is it always some illegal migrant that has human rights? I've never seen anyone that I know take an expensive human rights lawyer and go to court. Never seen it.
I find it impossible to argue with anything you've just said. Completely and utterly impossible, because I wholeheartedly agree. I can't for the life of me understand why anyone in authority thinks it is remotely acceptable to spend so much as a penny more on these foreign criminals, and they are foreign criminals as far as I'm concerned. They've broken into our country. That makes them criminals as far as I'm concerned. Why is it okay to spend so much as a penny on them when, as you rightly say, that people who have fought for, well, I assume at the time was Queen and country, but now obviously King and country, are left homeless and desperate and just in shop doorways and stuff like that, cold, even now as we speak, you know, freezing cold outside. I don't know if you noticed how freezing it was when you walked in. They'll be sleeping rough this evening with no family around them for Christmas. Possibly, if they're lucky, maybe their local community might do some sort of soup kitchen. And these are people who have fought for us so that we can actually enjoy what we enjoy.
We watched,
why does that make sense?
We showed a clip the other day from BBC Question Time. Don't watch it, you'll just upset yourself. And there was this illegal migrant that was on it. And he was going, you know, Fiona Bruce went, now we've got an illegal migrant in the audience. Tell us what happened. And he went, well, I went to Turkey, did the interview, and they told me that I wasn't eligible. Yes. Went to Serbia. Yeah. He listed like 8 or 10 countries.
And not very nice countries either, let's be
that's
clear.
right. Some of them were not the Garden of Eden, right? And she turns around and she goes, well, Britain needs to take people in because he's got nowhere else to go. No, 10 countries had said his case was meritless. And Britain goes, yeah, we'll have him.
I know exactly the clip you're talking about. I saw it. I remember thinking at the time, if all of those countries had said no to this individual, then the chances are there was probably something wrong with that claim in the first place. And maybe that was a warning sign to say to us and to any other country, don't do it. Yeah. Don't go near there.
It seems to me, and look, I'm not an expert on immigration law, but it seems to me when we hear from these courts, not that people are let into the country or allowed to stay in the country because they've got a good case. It seems to me if you have any case at all, that is to say, So the only people that get rejected, the 13% that are rejected, are people who have got literally no excuse at all to stay in the country. So if you say anything, chicken nuggets, my cat will be sad, you know, just anything. And it seems to me that, and it was really interesting that Stephen Barrett, the barrister, was talking about this, about misconduct in public office. You know, these judges that are ruling chicken nuggets is a good reason to stay in the UK, they know the law doesn't say that, right? Let's just be clear. And what they're actually saying is, they're saying, I personally want uncontrolled immigration. Unfortunately, the law does not say that. So what I will do is I will sit in as an immigration judge. I'll deliberately get into that position, and I will find any excuse to let people in. Any excuse I can come up with. Just anything. Just say anything, it's fine.
I reckon...
Oh, by the way, Phil, let's just remind ourselves, the man who was convicted of molesting his children, managed to stay in Britain on the basis he didn't want to be separated from his children. Literally, the kids who escaped him are the reason that he's allowed to stay in the UK in a council house.
I don't see their human rights coming into play here, do you?
I mean, unbelievable. I've been jailed for molesting my children, but you can't deport me because I want to be close to them.
You couldn't make it up. I wish you could, but you can't. I would suggest that actually, one of the only ways we're really going to stop nonsense like this is by, again, it's all about the laws. We need to understand that the law is not on the side of the British people in many, many cases now. Or let me be more precise, is not on the side of hard-working, decent, tax-paying and law-abiding British citizens. The law doesn't exist for us anymore. We follow it because we're respectful, but it's not on our side.
No.
And where I think that it could make a massive difference is if we turn around and say that by allowing, whether it's as a conduit or someone who fights for it en masse or whatever it is, anyone who allows some sort of mass illegal, this is very important, immigration into the country, I have zero objection whatsoever with anyone who wants to come here legitimately, who wants to work, who wants to contribute tax system. Go for it, knock yourself out. I have a lot of respect for people like that, but I do not have any respect for someone who comes over here in a dinghy and wants a free ride. I get very wound up by that, and I suggest that the only way we're going to really get a grip on this is by actually holding those who facilitate that accountable and make it punishable.
Right, so let's give this example. I heard this statistic the other day. It might not be quite right. 1 million people come to the UK from Syria and say, we are fleeing Bashir al-Assad. Right, OK, got it. We understand he's terrible. We understand he's gassed his own people. We've got all that. The man is thrown out of office and they go, we don't want to go back. Hang on. The man you are fleeing from has gone. But we're still here. So what's going on now? Yeah, we built
a life for ourselves here. We don't want to go back.
Exactly right. What they say is,
when I say built a life, actually no. Can we correct this? We've given them a life. Yeah. There's a massive difference. It's not about building a life, because building a life suggests that you work damn hard and you earn every penny that you get and you put it to good use and you build yourself a life. That's what's building a life. When you have handouts at the British taxpayers' expense, I'm not blooming surprised that these cretins don't want to go home, because of course they don't want to go home. They've got it cushy here, haven't they? So why would they go home?
Yeah, I think we like it here. It's not acceptable. I mean, always remember the following, and I've made this point multiple times, but Europe, roughly Europe, because it's not quite Europe, was faced with a number of risks of genocide. One of them was the risk of genocide in Ukraine, one was the risk of genocide in Nagorno-Karabakh, and one was the risk of genocide in Gaza. Now, the reality is, none of those genocides actually took place, thank God. But always remember something. Had there been a real, genuine and fulsome genocide in in Ukraine, we would not have been able to take the refugees from Ukraine, because our migrant hotels would be full of people from countries where there is no war at all. And so you'd be in a position, had the Azeris massacred the Armenians, they didn't. You would have to turn around and say, these Armenian Christians are now going to die unless we get them to Britain, and there is no space because the Albanians are in the hotels. Can you imagine the moral bankruptcy of that?
You know, I can't help but wonder whether or not actually so much of the perils of the Western world is still a hang-up from what happened in World War II, because, and again, declared it earlier, I'm of Jewish faith, so I feel as if I'm okay to say this. It's almost as if the Western world has for so long been terrified of, sort of on their watch, allowing something similar to happen again that happened to, let's not forget, 10 million people. Everyone bangs on about 6 million Jewish people. Yes, of course, Jewish people were the largest minority to be persecuted during the Holocaust. But let's be very clear, it was a total of 10 million people, and there were people from many different denominations.
What was it?
So you had people who were
I think I'm right in saying that in June and July of 1943, 1 in 4 Belarusians was murdered.
It was something horrendous, yeah. I mean, you've got a mass number of Roma gypsies that were gassed as well. There were people who were disabled, who were people who they simply didn't like the look of. I'm not exaggerating. People who were from the LGBT community, although we didn't necessarily call it LGBT, of course, in those days. But the fact that we actually had people from all those different walks of life, all killed at the hands of the Nazis. And the reason I think that we have so many people who otherwise anyone in their right mind would turn around and say, you are not okay to be in the UK anymore, is because that the Western world is terrified of being accused of allowing that level of genocide.
I met genuine refugees who were fleeing from Ukraine to Poland, and I will tell you the Refugee Convention is absolutely right. Genuine refugees want to go to the nearest safe country, and I'll tell you why. Because the reason they were crossing into Poland was not because they were interested in Polish accommodation, not because they wanted they wanted to be under the missile defence of Poland. That's all. They just would have pitched a tent. They weren't bothered. Genuine refugees don't go, I'll tell you what, Tokyo sounds good this time of year. They don't do that. What they want to do is go to the nearest safe place, and basically that is behind armed guards in Poland. That's it. Anyway, I'm being slagged off for being too serious. Can you believe that?
Who are you and what have you done with the real Andre?
Oh my God, I can't get it right. Can't get it right. Anyway, if you want to give me a call, it's 0344 499 1000. Listen, you can talk about something funny. You can talk about something serious. They just told me, Andre, I know you want to have a laugh, but this lot will love a rant about immigration. They will. They'll love it. Oh, they like to pretend they're old softies, but I'm telling you, they'll love it. Mince pie, sherry, and a bit of immigration talk. Anyway, we'll be back just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Uncle Dre's Yule Log, and I will tell you, to my dear viewers and my dear listeners, I want to talk about what was just said during the break. Our producer came in, he said, what's coming up next is Pete Barnes with the press preview. And he said, unfortunately, there are no newspapers, or no front pages rather, they haven't come through yet. So what are we going to do? And I said, the slight problem is no newspapers are published on Christmas Day. Now, what happened next was this. The producer wants us to come up with some things for Pete to talk about. Here's what I want to do. Not tell Pete that there's no newspapers. Sit him down and say the front pages are coming. Sit him down and then not give him the front pages and see how long he lasts with the press preview involving no press and no preview.
I feel like you two, given that you're both quite capable of talking quite
I reckon he'd have first stab at it, you know.
But I reckon, furthermore, that you could just say it's your Christmas present to him, that actually you've invited him in to do all the hard work of a press preview, but actually none of the work is necessary because there is no press to preview.
But wouldn't it be so funny, though, if you got him in and persuaded him to attempt it even though he couldn't?
Well, I don't know if he'd see it funny like that, but maybe.
He wouldn't, though, would he? But he'd do quite well. Like, he would last until the first break, I reckon.
You see, the thing is that Pete's quite professional. I'm not saying that we're not, or we're probably not, but I mean, like, Pete is quite professional. So he'd probably want to be able to do the necessary work involved in carrying out a good press preview, and the fact that actually he's running the risk of not being able to do that because there is no press to review, I could imagine won't go down very well. But hey.
Oh, well, I'll tell you the other thing. Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of when I used to get into a load of trouble when we used to do the simulcast between Talk Radio and Talk Sport just for a very short period of time, and me and Martin Kellner would do it together overnight. And for weeks and weeks and weeks, Martin Kellner would do a quiz. And what happened was you would phone in with the answers. What Kellner did not know, because he was on Talk Sport, that in the hour before we joined up together, I would give the Talk Radio listeners the answers to Kellner's quiz and say, here are the answers. I used to give them in full and then go, Kellner can't hear this, phone up in 10 minutes and win the quiz. And Kellner was impressed the way that every single week somebody from Talk Radio managed to get 100%.
I have a feeling that you'll be able to confess this to him, actually, because I've got a feeling, I could be wrong, but I'm quietly confident that Martin Kellner is back with us this weekend, because I believe that Ben Fletcher is taking a break.
Yes,
so
he is.
if I'm not very much mistaken, it is...
well, all I can say to you, Martin...
Well, mind you, actually, the website still says Ben Fletcher. But I think Martin Kellner is back at some point.
We all enjoyed that quiz, but here at Talk Radio, we're very competitive. And so when Talk Sport were always winning, we thought there's two ways of doing this. We can either, you know, try and encourage more calls or whatever, or we could simply cheat in a way that Kellner didn't know about. So for a whole year, he ran that quiz, not knowing that he had been compromised. Anyway, there we have it. But I do want to talk...
You basically told the listeners, don't trust the thing that you do.
No, do you know how I had to stop? Because there was a prize involved. I got into all sorts of trouble.
I don't believe for a second you got into trouble.
Yeah, well, what I did
I'll
was...
tell you someone who is in trouble.
Well, yeah, actually, and I think this is sad, actually, because I don't know much about Thomas Markle, Meghan Markle's father, but, you know, he's clearly had significant medical problems. He's actually lost a leg. At one point, he'd had a heart attack. He's really, really ill. And unfortunately, because of the cost of all the medical procedures, he's out of cash. And he is now doing a GoFundMe page to try and raise money for his recovery. I mean, it's a bit pathetic given her position in life.
I think it's absolutely horrendous. I mean, if this doesn't tell... And anyone who bangs on and says, you know, oh, Meghan Markle's just misunderstood, she's not really that bad, she's a good person at heart. No, sorry, look how unwell her father is, and he's now having to do a GoFundMe, and she won't even give him a cent. I think that's disgusting. You know, some people might say, hang on, we don't know what went on between the two of them, we don't know how we're... You get one father in this life, do you know what I mean? You get one father, you get one mother, and biologically you do anyway.
I think you've got to...
I can't buy it. I don't understand it.
Somebody pointed out, I don't want to talk about somebody or give away any confidential information, but I know somebody who knew Meghan Markle. And what she said is, it's really interesting because she's one of those people, and now, is she a good person or a bad person? But it's curious. every single person she's been close to, she's alienated in the end. I mean, when she turned round, she was talking about how close she was to the Queen. Right, you think about it. She was married to.
as in Queen Elizabeth, as opposed to Queen
Elizabeth II. So she was married to. She was married to Harry, and in the royal family for what, about a year or something. Now, in the first, I mean, I know you're not married, but in the first year you're married, how often do you hang out with the grandmother of your partner? Like, it's not you never see her. I'm not saying you never see her, but like in a year, you wouldn't have seen her like every month, would you? I mean, how close were they?
Well, I don't know, but I would imagine that if she sort of pushed the boundaries of what was probably classed as normal for the number of times that you'd see your grandmother-in-law, I can't help but think that she'd probably do it for obvious reasons, because her late grandmother-in-law was the late Queen. Yeah. So, I mean, that would be the only reason. She obviously likes the idea of the power of the royal family. But, I mean, she loves it that much that she's managed to convince her husband to leave the royal family.
Do you know what the Duke of Edinburgh, the former Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, was reputed to have said of Meghan Markle?
Remind me.
At least Wallis Simpson shut her mouth. I mean, that is just damning. That is damning, isn't it? Like, literally, what...
I could well imagine Prince Philip saying something like that. And actually, that's the kind of comment that he got him a lot of respect, I think.
I think my favourite comment that Prince Philip ever said was about Princess Anne. Do you remember?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. I don't remember.
If it doesn't fart or eat hay, she's not interested in it.
I don't recall that one at all. Can never imagine Prince Philip saying it like that. But anyway, well, there you go. Well, why not, indeed? But again, as it was comments like that sort of made him human, and so there were elements that made him likeable. There were some people who didn't like that at all, thought he was too brusque and too a bit old-fashioned, a bit said what he thought, but I respected that in him.
Well, look, I mean, he is what he is. I mean, he served his country, fought against the Nazis, many of whom were relatives of his, and he fought against them anyway. Look, we're going to go to Pete Barnes after the news, but in the last few minutes of this show, or this segment rather, I want to ask you about your Christmas. So you were talking about going to midnight mass at Southwark Cathedral. Don't go to the Brompton Oratory; it's very boring.
They're not here to answer.
I don't dislike the people, but I just don't think if you're going to do anything in terms of religious observation this Christmas,
but they
3 hours
like
of Latin is very dull. Anyway, on a serious note, so I know this is going to sound like a stupid comment, but I don't know how Jewish you are. I know you're from a Jewish family and all that sort of thing, but I don't know how interested you are in the religious side or whatever.
I mean, I'll put it this way. There was a time in my life where I was going to synagogue once a week. Yeah. The main reason that I don't anymore is because I have sort of... I've not lost my way. It sounds very cliche. I don't like that too much. It's more that the direction of travel of the community that I was an active part of has changed slightly to a sort of politics that I don't care for, and therefore I thought, well, I'd rather remember it how it was rather than fight with anyone, so I've backed off a bit.
Okay.
And it's possible that I sort of like bounce a bit around here and there, but not necessarily go on a regular basis. So still, my religion means a great deal to me. I don't feel like... I know there are some people who'd feel like a traitor going into another religious institution based on it not being their religion. That's not me at all. I happen to think midnight mass done properly is one of the most beautiful religious services.
I mean, in terms of tomorrow, are you actually going to have the traditional Christmas dinner? Have you got a Christmas tree?
Oh, yeah.
Well, some people do, some people don't.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Look, I'm sat here in a Santa's hat, for goodness sake, those listening on radio.
But you're contractually obliged to wear that.
I was going to say, it was sort of forced upon me. Chuck just sort of came in and said, here, we need to be more Christmas. Like, oh, thanks, OK. And then we started talking about the war in the Middle East. Happy Christmas. But I'd say that in terms of my personal following of it, I absolutely love Christmas. And as James Max, formerly of this parish, has said on many an occasion, no one does Christmas like the Jews.
Yes, indeed. So what? All right, let's be pretentious. What is your Christmas message? Come on, you've got to give an alternative to the King's speech.
Well, I wouldn't give an alternative. Can I say rather than an alternative to the King's speech, because I will respect the fact that His Majesty is going to say what he's going to say, and I would never try and top that. But what I would try and top is the revolting, ridiculous speech made by our esteemed Prime Minister, where he released that earlier in the last 24 hours, where actually I always think that a Christmas message is supposed to be about that of hope and trying to give someone encouragement to look the year ahead with some level of optimism. And I'm afraid that Sir Keir Starmer just didn't do that for me, and I don't think he did it for anyone who's really listening to it. Because what made it worse, all I took away from his speech was he confirmed the mess that the country he's supposed to be in charge of is actually in. He acknowledged that people are struggling with the cost of living. And so to my mind, what I would say is that if we are thinking ahead to Boxing Day, the high streets are probably quite terrified this year because of taxes that are affecting them in terms of pubs and business rates and all those sorts of things. Let's try and protect our high streets. Go onto the high street, even if you buy something very small. If everyone buys something very small, it might only be a couple of quid to us, but it will make a massive difference to those high streets. Furthermore,
here we go.
Furthermore, might I just say, very, very quickly, go to the pub as well, because they need our support. Drink responsibly, though. And even more sincerely than that, is 2026 is one step nearer to hopefully seeing the back of this appalling government. So just hang on in there, Britain. We can do this.
Well, I will tell you one thing, and this is to you, Phil, but also to everybody watching and listening. Keir Starmer cannot come up with a worse message than the disastrously well-meaning Easter attempt when he said that he just didn't want to merely extend Easter greetings to Christians, but also those Jews and Muslims that were celebrating Easter. Right? Just to be clear, the risen Christ, right, just not a part of Islam or Judaism, right? I was like, the Jews that are celebrating Easter, what you mean the ones that have become Christians? I mean, it's just...
Well, I was going to say, I mean maybe you might have an argument for Jews for Jesus, but I don't think that's about it.
I don't mean to be rude.
I think that's factually accurate.
But ascending into heaven is heresy in Islam, right?
No, but I would imagine that that is factually accurate. Easter is a Christian festival, and a very important Christian festival. Christmas is a very important time for Christianity. Now, I think that anyone of any religion can appreciate the true meaning of Christmas. You know, that is obviously sort of spending time with loved ones and peace and harmony and giving to others, and of course getting as wasted as you possibly can. No, I'm joking, please drink responsibly. But being serious, when I say that I think we can all take something from Christmas, but it doesn't mean you have to celebrate it religiously.
Okay, are you staying with us or are you going?
Well, I don't know. Am I old?
I want you to stay.
I mean, I want to go to midnight mass, but I want it. I'll do
okay. It's way. Don't think I could take the pain. Won't you stay? Okay.
Apparently, I'm staying. Okay,
so I just want to say you are hosting Virgin Radio tomorrow.
That's a good trick. No, I'm not.
Oh, sorry, Tony Morton. Tony Morton is hosting Virgin Radio tomorrow. When he said in my ear, by the way, he's hosting Virgin Radio tomorrow.
I think you mean Tony. It's not me.
Phil Day. Right, I'll tell you what we're going to have to do. We're going to have
Tony Mortimer.
No, we're going to have to write this segment off as a bad job, and we're going to have to say 0344 499 1000. But this is the moment you've been waiting for. After the news, Pete Barnes will attempt a press preview on a day when no press is published. You've got to wait for that. Wow.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the Channel crossing as the dangerous bit, but actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants, and as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's a saying the old Russian, Pete is not here. My friend, he is, in fact, in Wigan, where everyone's got a bit, that's just the oldest joke ever, isn't it? So, what we're going to have to say is, in honour of the fact that Pete is currently in Wigan, we're going to have to say that tonight, more than any night, Pete is Reet. Pete, how are you?
Well, first of all, I didn't like the idea that you thought you could pull a fast one on me and that I knew there was no newspapers.
Of all the things that I've done to offend and upset you,
I mean,
that
a
would
lot.
that would have been superb. It would have been absolutely great. So, okay, Pete, are you with the family? Are you in Oral?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I got up here this afternoon. I was on with Johnny Gould about 6 o'clock for a half an hour, and yes, I've literally stayed awake to do this, where you thought you could pull a practical joke on me,
honestly,
and on Christmas Eve.
Just to remind everybody, Pete was scheduled to do the press preview, and the producer came in and said, it's slightly odd, none of the front pages have arrived. Well, that's interesting, because there's no newspapers on Christmas Day. Now, that was the moment when I begged the producers to put Pete on anyway, telling him that this newspapers had been delayed, and then only when the broadcast started, do nothing and leave him. And you know what I'd have done, Pete? You know me, Pete. You know me, Pete. I'd have just shut up. I'd have just shut up.
What?
Pete, I can't help but feel that you've got a slightly better end of the deal, though, because I've been made to wear a Santa's hat, and you haven't.
You see, this is the producers can't get you here. That's the thing.
So, okay, Pete, first of all, look, you're going to tell us in this segment why you think this year has been particularly terrible, and I think it's going to be pretty easy, but I think what you're going to do is remind us of some of the awful things that have gone on. But before we do that, what's Christmas to you? What are you up to? Because I know that you're not a particularly religious person. There's probably not going to be midnight mass, but have you got the family? Are they all watching us now, by the way, the Barnes clan?
I think they might be. I'm in the dining room. They might be. They're in the living room, but I actually don't know what they're watching. But it's one of those things that I think my mother once said to me.
They're all sat there going, not him again, not him again.
I know, yeah.
Literally that. That other one's terrible.
Literally that.
No, they do. Honestly,
wait, are they talking about me or you?
Mums and dads go, when they're bloody going to get rid of him? When are they going to get rid of him?
Yeah. Oh, honestly, no. But, so I'm up here for a couple of days, and then I'm back, actually, with Kevin at 6 a.m. on the 28th. So that's my Christmas.
There's one thing I've got to ask you, because it may well have been this year, it may well not have been, but our good friends in places like Warrington, Wigan, Preston and whatever, how bad were the trains? Because there's been real problems in recent years.
Do you know, I think I counted myself very lucky that this one was genuinely fine. The problem actually is after Christmas, when the works kind of kick up a little bit harder, and they're running to like the 27th of January. So it's not even like just a couple of days. It is literally the entire month. So this is why everybody seems to be kind of just doing a really short Christmas this year, because it's the getting back to London. It's not necessarily getting out, it's getting back in, which most people aren't fighting to get back, if I'm being honest. It's it's not exactly the place you want to be at the moment.
No, well, I've got to be honest with you. I actually sort of, even coming from the outskirts of Hertfordshire this evening, decided there was no way I was going to risk the trains. Well, first of all, there isn't much in the way of public transport on Christmas Day, as we know, and I wasn't sure what time I'd finish. So I have driven all the way in here this evening, because I just thought I don't want to get stranded. I don't want to run the risk of not being able to get back.
I'll tell you one thing. This might be just a minority sport for people who are in the northwest, but I will tell you that rail company, what is it, Arriva, they have no compunction whatsoever of cancelling 2 trains that are going through Wigan, and then just say, all of you pile on this. And literally, there's people sat on those roof rack things.
Oh, yeah. I've been on one of those trains. It's like the last chopper out of Saigon. Most Christmas Eves. It's actually ridiculous. Euston Station is atrocious.
Horrendous.
It's Avanti at the moment, who's the
Avanti, that's it, not Arriva.
Arriva's the bus thing. You know, actually,
there is trains for Arriva though.
Oh, are they?
I
Oh,
think,
I beg
but
your
I don't
pardon.
think. Yeah, I don't think they're in the UK. I think they're in France. But yeah, I tell you now, it is absolutely ridiculous.
fancy
You know,
not
it's quite
knowing
funny.
that. Sorry.
But you
I know,
used to
sorry.
say
Yeah.
in
See,
previous
I prepare, Phil. I prepare.
in previous years.
I didn't know I was doing this segment until 5 minutes ago.
In previous
Neither did
years,
I.
you've seen. In previous years, I've seen like dads who live in Preston literally having to virtually crowd surf to get into the last train. They're just not gonna send him. Anyway, Pete, look, here is the weird thing about this year, right? Who knew that Keir Starmer's only been in for like a year, right? It seems like he's been there for like 100 years. It sort of reminds me of the end of John Major, you know, where it's almost like, you know, it just feels like, oh God, please, like this half-dead Shire pony continuing when nobody wants him.
Well, let's be real. His big thing was traffic cones. I mean, you know, Keir Starmer's taking away rights, left, right, and centre. He's locking people up for tweets. He's, you know, taking away jury trials. On the scale of 1 to John Major, I don't think we're quite there yet, really. But
No.
I have to admit, this year has been extraordinary.
But before,
and you're right.
before
It
you go,
feels
Pete,
like they've
sorry,
been in
can I
forever.
interrupt you?
Sorry.
Sorry to say that, but just before you start all this, and I know you've got it all prepared and whatever, but you alluded.
I genuinely don't.
Yeah, you alluded. Well, just pretend, right? Just pretend. Right, we'll all pretend.
Anyway, and you just lambasted me for
Remember
preparation.
the old saying, what have you spotted in the papers? Yeah, what we emailed 10 minutes ago. Pete, you mentioned that, and I just think it's quite interesting, about all this jury trial, abolition of local elections, all these things that are going on, the banging people up, the non-crime hate incidents and all that. Do you think that our civil liberties and our democracy are genuinely under assault?
I do, actually, because I look at the things that this government has actually been able to achieve, which has been all the terrible things. All the good things it's wanted to do, they've not been very good at. But if you think about it, they brought in the abortion laws. It looks like assisted dying is going to be on the books. They've made fundamental changes to the right to a free trial. They've made changes to freedom of speech. They've made changes to so many different aspects of structural rights that we have that they don't have a mandate for. None of it was in the manifesto. None of it they stood on. And yet it's all been done, and this is the worst bit, to save the system.
Yeah.
Everything has been done to a sacrifice to save the system. So the system must exist. And
Is it my imagination, though? Or is everything good that they've done is basically undoing a mess that they've created? So, for example, when they said we're not going to rob pensioners of winter fuel, well, that was their choice in the first place to take it away from them. When they said we're now not going to charge the inheritance tax on farmers for properties worth around £1 million, actually going to be near £2.5 million, but that was their doing in the first place. So anything that good they've done or anything that they've read correctly is because of the mess they've created in the first place.
Yep.
Oh, without a doubt. But you have to remember that the only reason they've ever U-turned is because the politics was toxic, not because it was the right thing to do.
Oh, true.
This is the bit I keep having to drive home, is that the only reason we get these U-turns, it's really just a watering down this farmers tax situation, is because the politics was absolutely horrendous. And you know it is, because they dumped it on the DEFRA secretary, which I bet none of us could actually name who it is. That's the point, is that this was not, despite the fact it was Rachel Reeves, one of her big announcements, the politics was that bad that they've dumped it onto DEFRA. So, you know, this is the point, is that the moral side of the Labour Party is just non-existent anymore. And I tell you now, if the trade unions disassociate, they are in for a real pain next year that I don't think any political party has gone through, not even the Tories.
All right,
I mean,
but let me throw this at you. So I believe the Labour Party are the first political party in history to have sacked their own voters, right? You know, we have a large audience, as you know, in the north of England. We might as well talk about Wigan. The reality is the people at the top of the Labour Party hate people from Wigan. They hate ordinary working people who go out every day. They hate them because they're not interested in trans rights. They hate them because they're not, you know, pro-immigration. They hate them because they're anti-EU. But fundamentally, you know, somebody like Clem Attlee, if he looked at Ed Miliband, I mean, he'd be depressed, wouldn't he?
Depressed.
Yeah, I always think
a bit more than that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I always think it's the party of Keir Hardie went to the party of Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? I think it's just a shocking decline in what is a relatively short amount of time politically, if we think about it. I mean, the decline, I actually think, probably started Well, they always say the mask slipped with the Gillian Duffy incident, but I actually think it was Ed Miliband. I think that period of the Labour Party was just, it really showed the divide and the kind of, like you said, the divorcing of its voter base, its traditional voter base. You know, Blair tried to set it on its path and hold on to the working class vote. But, you know, no matter how far that was going to go, it was never going to work. But, you know, Ed Miliband just didn't care. And once those people got in, like, really took the reins of the Labour Party, they really took control.
But if you went... And once again, happy to talk about Wigan. I could talk about Lee, although you hate the place, so we won't. But you know, you go into the centre of Wigan and you say, which of you here, and you could shout with a megaphone, who of you are concerned about rights for transsexual asylum seekers? Right, and you would sit there all month. And people would go, I don't care about this issue. Moreover, if my Labour MP talks about this issue, I will vote reform. Right? And yet they continue.
Yeah, and this is what Douglas Murray calls it, the opportunity lost moment, in terms of we've spent so much time fussing about nonsense when we really have missed some major key markers, which has been economic collapse. Yep. You know, while we've been trying to figure out what a woman is for the past God knows how many years, the country has literally melted, and there's not a lot we can really do to bring it back. And this is the big problem, is that we're so far down
I'll tell you what, I'll make an in-joke. What is a woman? I mean, that debate took place in Atherton for quite some time, but it was for very different reasons.
Don't worry, I don't get it either.
I'm here. You can't say things like that while I'm here.
Can I just double check, Pete? Because I'm baffled by this, and I know that this is your bag, obviously, sort of your title being political strategist. So one has to assume that this is the kind of thing that you would study. What is genuinely the motivation behind any of our politicians ignoring British people? Hard-working, decent, tax-paying, law-abiding citizens, shoving them to one side and prioritising benefit scroungers, prioritising the illegal migrants, prioritising 0.0025% of the population, namely those who identify as trans. What am I missing here? Why are they doing this?
Because they think you're an idiot and you can't be trusted. That's what it is. Fundamentally, you have to be managed. That's the thing. We aren't being led, we're being managed. And it's really clear, I think, when you look at things like the Online Harms Act, that was kind of brought in under the guise of what somebody think of the children. It wasn't nothing to do with that. It was all about the fact that you can't be trusted with certain information. You know, just the other day, there was a huge court case between Wikipedia and the government over the Online Harms Act, and that Wikipedia might pull out of the UK. WhatsApp might pull out because it's encroaching so heavily onto these fundamental basic principles, such as your right to privacy. The government doesn't trust you with information. Look how often you hear the phrase "found out." That is the phrase of 2025. Found out. From the Afghan situation to all of it.
But Pete, here's something. Now, I'm just going to put this out there. I'm sure you'll agree with me, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you won't. But if Ofcom or the British government, whoever, I think Ofcom, actually, I feel a bit sorry for them because they're lumped with all this. But anyway, and we've got to be nice to them, they're our regulator as well. But on the serious note, they are lumped with this mess. If the British government, the House of Commons, the House of Lords, if in legislative terms the British say, we have the right to force Facebook to comply with British law, why can't Iran say to Facebook, we insist that you disclose the names of every single person who has A, committed adultery, B, is gay, C, has photos in which they're not appropriately dressed according to Islam? And now, if you were to say to Keir Starmer, Facebook has sent a list of gay people in Iran to the Iranian government and they've all been executed, then Keir Starmer would be furious about that. But it's only the same thing. The law in Iran says that gay people should be executed. The law in the United Kingdom also has rules that don't apply in the United States of America. If the UK can force Facebook to do something, there is no reason why North Korea should not be allowed to do the same.
Can I just Pete, just before you chime in on this, very, very quickly on that point, exactly the same way, though, that companies that are global companies have to abide by certain laws when they're actually a physical presence in the UK. I actually don't see why the online companies should be above any law of any land that they want to make money.
Yeah, but the law says that if they don't do what the United Kingdom wants, they'll be fined 10% of their global turnover. I mean, that's just completely mad.
Well, global turnover is ridiculous.
But remember something about the Americans, and Pete, I'll bring you in a second. Remember what the Americans are saying? They're saying these are businesses based in the United States of America, staffed by people in the United States of America, listed on American stock exchanges, hosted in servers in the United States of America. And what you are now telling us is that UK law applies in California. It's garbage.
But they do have UK branches, though, don't they, Pete? They've got UK companies. UK
so the reason that they... so the big thing around the kind of big tech situation is the fact that the government, again, it is about the control of the flow of information. And what they really want to do with the big tech companies is to confine them and to make sure that whatever information they put out, they are held liable for.
Yes.
So basically, it's all about this idea of when does a publisher become a promoter becomes a publisher, and all this. It's a bit of a technical legal situation that they find themselves in. But the big problem is actually the reason they're going after this is, yet again, they don't trust you with the information. They don't trust that if you read something, you can trust whether it's true or false. They think that that has to be managed. And I go back to this point yet again, that it's all about managing. On the point about social media companies in other countries, that does happen. You know, this has happened where countries have asked Facebook and other companies to supply information. They've said no. The reason Keir Starmer views it different is because they're the good ones.
Yes.
It is that perverse nature of the modern left, where they think their politics makes them a better person.
But it seems to me, and I watch with interest what Australia's doing, just to explain. They've got a social media ban on under 16s. The reason I think that if that works, that's the ideal thing to follow, is because the phone is definitely in Britain. There is no doubt about that. Therefore, restricting what comes on your phone actually is the best way of doing it. So you say, look, you can go out to the internet and you can find absolutely anything, but there is some material that you're not allowed to have if you're, say, a 16-year-old in the UK. And if we can make that work, that's the way of doing it, because we can debate where Facebook is, but there is no doubt the phone is in Britain.
Yes, and I think that's reasonably the right way to go down. But what you really should be doing is actually encouraging social media companies, not beating them over the head with 10% global taxes. I mean, it's in a preposterous situation. We have to be nice to Ofcom, but I mean, we gave power to the very worst people. And I said very publicly to Paul Scully, who was the digital minister.
So that's being nice to Miss Pete. Well done. There.
I mean, for me, with that lot, yes. But no.
Be nice to them, Pete.
Be nice.
Let it be known that's potentially the view of Peter Barnes, but that's not necessarily the view of Talk. But anyway.
Let's be nice to them. I hate them, they're awful.
Yes. No, but if you wanted to go that way, then I made this point to Paul Scully, who was the digital minister who brought in the Online Harms Act, saying, this is what's going to happen. You set the precedent so that even if you think you're the good people in charge, you're not always going to be the good people in charge. And that's the point.
I had lunch with Paul Scully and Christopher Biggins, right? And over the lunch, Biggins went, the thing I'm most worried about is this ludicrous online safety bill. And he just slated it. And Scully just sat there and did not say a word. Yeah. And I thought, go on, I dare you to say it was me that wrote it. But he didn't. He just sat there nodding. It was great. And I think at the end of it, he said, well, I think Labour have misinterpreted bits of it. That's all he came up with. Anyway, Pete, look, you're a fascinating guy. I appreciate we've not got to the why this is the worst year, but we will get there. And let me tell you something.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Pete is contractually obliged to say that this year was the worst year. However, I think he does have a genuine case. And if you want to hear that
Can I just make a really quick point? Yeah. Really quick point. I don't like how it says Peter's worst year ever on the banner underneath. That makes it sound like I've had a terrible year.
What would you like it to say?
Yeah, what do you want it to say?
I don't know, but that sounds very personal.
Pete's not right.
All right, what about the worst year ever with Pete Barnes?
Could we discuss why it's been bad for Pete personally?
Okay.
I've actually had a really good year.
What's been your highlight, Pete? Come on.
Sitting in that chair.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there is one thing I've said to you, and I know your family are watching. I mean, at the end of the day, there are a number of people, including you, that have spent an incredibly long time doing the apprenticeship. And I always think that it's important that people get their opportunity, having been around for that amount of time. I really do.
Yeah, no, I trust me, I like sitting in both of those chairs. It's generally one of the things I actually really enjoy, despite the fact that, there's a lot of people that don't like me very much, but...
I like it.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, you don't.
What is this, panto season or something?
Okay, Pete, we are going to be back in a couple of moments. 03444991000 if you want to get in touch. I think the Barnes family should give Pete a drink whilst we go to the break. More in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, this is Uncle Dre's Yule Log with Phil, Dave and Pete Barnes. Okay, now we have got an idea that might be dreadful, but we're going to do it anyway.
Seems very ironic playing Silent Night with you at the helm.
Indeed.
Thank you for saying that.
So, Phil,
Hello.
just tell the viewers and listeners what sparkling television production you've suggested that we've all agreed to.
I didn't suggest this, excuse me. I just said, do you want me to stick around to past? Because I'd quite like to go and check out Midnight Mass after this. And yet you said go and do live from there.
Right.
So it wasn't me.
We're going to call it Phil Dave's Midnight
So
Mass.
here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. With no permission and no technical equipment.
And what could possibly go wrong?
We're going to send our Jewish contributor to a Christian ceremony to just have a crack at filming it. So, Phil, what you've got to do, get in there and just, I don't know, they might throw you out, but if they do throw you out, just get the footage of that as well.
Great. Okay.
Remember, they might start with all the lights off, and if you've got your camera going, it's just going to be bad.
Well,
Right.
I'm not so sure how I feel about
What
this.
am I doing here? What am I doing? Andre, you're a fool. He's Jewish. He doesn't know what happens at Midnight Mass. It'll be an adventure. Just go.
Oh, my
God.
I've been to Midnight Mass before.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping to surprise him, Pete.
No, I've been there. No, I can't deny. I haven't been
I've
to
never
one
been.
like the one that you described.
Anyway,
Have you not?
Tune in at midnight.
Oh, it's lovely.
where-
It's one of
tune
the,
in-
honestly, it's one of the most beautiful ceremonies.
Tune in at midnight, where we will be broadcasting without securing any rights whatsoever or permission, live from Southern Cathedral until
Well,
they throw us out.
I was actually not going to identify the cathedral now, but never mind. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, that might be a problem. I don't know what to do.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Look. It is
I
what
might not have a signal.
it is. What it is. You're taking a phone into a midnight mass and just having a crack.
Well, I
on
tell
live
you
TV.
what I could do.
It is what it is.
Well, I tell you what I could do. What about as a striking compromise, rather than actually doing anything live, you can essentially film me live going over there. But I think maybe if I just try and
No, we've got to have it live filmed.
No, go in
got to have it
and
live.
interview the
Gotta give people what
parishioners.
they want.
Just like get
Christmas.
involved. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you 100. I'll give you 100.
You can't do
Double it,
bribery
double it.
live on air.
Okay. I will be pleased. I will be pleased if you march into the cathedral with your camera, walk straight up to the bishop and go, "You are live on Talk TV, do not swear," and then interview him, right, until you get removed. See how long you can last.
Okay, yeah, oh, great.
See how long you can last. Go on.
Okay. No shouting, just stop oil. I've no intention of shouting, just stop oil. But anyway, okay, right. Fine. Well, let's discuss this rather than not live.
It's like that bet I had on holiday. How long can I chat up Jenna Ortega before she walks off? The answer was 2 seconds. I went, hello, Jenna, and they went, go away. And that was the end of it. Anyway, so we know what we're going to do now. Okay, so Pete, has the Barnes family given you a drink?
I have a cup of tea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Pete, on the serious note, this has been an awful year. And you know what? Okay, it is a year in review, but we've decided to say this is an awful year. It has been bad, and I just feel so sorry for this country. But what have been your lowlights of the year?
Oh, I still think one of the worst ones was the super injunction on the Afghan migrant situation.
Yeah.
Do you know, after the data breach of the MOD, and it found out that the government used the courts to withhold information from the press and therefore the public over the money spent, the number of people that came, the chaos that ensued after all of that. And they only found out about it a year later when they realized the data had been breached.
And they said, we have taken out this super injunction to stop members of parliament debating this, because if the public found out about it, they'd be very angry. And the court approved that. I mean, that's
but pretty much the courts didn't really have much of a choice, because the government's argument was if you don't keep the super injunction, people might die. So the courts didn't really have much of a choice. They didn't want to keep it, but on that basis, they kind of have to put it in place. But it was perverse that they had it in the first place. But then for Keir Starmer to get up and then to kind of argue that, we didn't carry it on. Well, you knew about it from day one. So that was just another barefaced lie. And I think that actually, come to think of it, might be the worst. The ease to which our officials and elected officials now lie to us. Like, they just lie.
I worry. Look, actually, do you know, you don't have to be very old to remember a time when that level of dishonesty to Parliament would have ended your career. It's not a very long time ago at all. Not a very long time ago.
Oh, no, you're completely right. And I think it was the fact that also other members held others responsible as well. Like, there was a kind of, you don't do that. The reason so much of our constitution is based on convention is that we didn't think we'd ever have people in Parliament who would do that.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons that we're in quite a lot of trouble, is we don't have any mechanisms to remove people, to punish people. And, everything's playing catch up, because it was like, it's why we have honourable gentlemen, the right honourable gentlemen, is it's because they weren't perfect, of course they weren't, but I always use Andrew Neil as the example. He's a veteran broadcaster, been around for donkey's years, and this is the first time he's ever said that a government has openly lied. He sits very firmly on the right, as we all know, but he bats fairly, and I tell you now, for him to say that.
Pete, you almost.
I know.
You almost.
I know.
You almost there. Got us into terrible trouble with our esteemed colleague.
Almost.
My advice is do not talk about batting with Brillo, because all you're just going to do is get yourself sued. Just to be clear.
Yes.
Very definitely. Definitely.
But no, in all seriousness, for him to come out and say such a thing, I think was a real moment.
Nor has he come out, Pete. Let's just be clear.
No, come on.
But on a serious note, I mean, I just worry, as a genuine view, that these people take the view, like you said earlier, the public are stupid. British people are fundamentally bad or stupid or both. And what we have to do is we have to twist the system in order to ensure that they are not able to decide what goes on. Simple as that.
Yeah. But I also think it's more along the lines that they don't trust you to make the right decision in their eyes. That's a big part of it, is that they don't think that they don't know how to argue their side anymore. So basically what they have to do is they constrain the system, they have to change elections, they have to move all this stuff, because they don't know how to debate. They don't know how to convince you that they're right. So what they have to do is to change the rules.
I mean, obviously...
You see it all the way through.
I'm having a go at the Conservative Party here when it comes to Essex, but I think what has happened with Essex County Council is simply extraordinary, where the Conservative group Now, I will say one thing about Conservatives on local council. They tend to be a bit worthy old bufferish rather than highly political. But they have literally publicly said, we are not holding an election in Essex County Council because the county council is going to be abolished, and the councillors are going to need to negotiate what happens constitutionally going forward. If there were to be an election, we would all lose and Reform would win, and they would negotiate instead of us. You've literally abolished an election on the basis you're going to lose.
And I mean, we had the Electoral Commission come out just the other day and say that what Downing Street was arguing was nonsense. I mean, that's an extraordinary moment for the Electoral Commission to come out and say something like that. You know, there's somewhat of a very silent referee at times. By the way, lest we forget, in 1974, when they merged a lot of two towns together, where Wigan and Lee became one council. Remember what happened back then? Instead of delaying the election, they had Wigan Council, they had Lee Council, I think there might have been another one as well, maybe Newton, well, probably not Newton, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Wigan Council kept their people, Lee Council kept their people, and then there was an election for the people that would come into office when the new council was created in 1 year's time. They were the people that negotiated the constitutional settlement, and the people of Wigan, Lee, etc. went out to vote and elected people who would be the council when that council was created, and those people decided the constitution. Why could it be done in 1974? Apparently in the Dark Ages, according to this lot, and it can't be done now. It's ridiculous, because I remind people that just after the Second World War, we had a general election with an 82% turnout. You know, this idea that, you know, I mean, the country was in a significantly worse state than it is now, and that's saying something. But, you know, the elections are sacrosanct. You know, I've never liked the fact that the government gets to choose when the election actually is. I actually wasn't that against the Fixed Term Parliament Act per se. But, you know, this is how giving a lot of power.
You look back, since universal suffrage came in, I think I'm right in saying this, although Pete's probably the guy to pull me up if I'm wrong. My understanding is that since universal suffrage came in, the local elections in Britain have been cancelled on the following occasions. At the latter end of the First World War, the latter end of the Second World War, foot and mouth, COVID, last year and this year. Right? So basically... 200 years and virtually no cancellations, and then 10 years, 4, 5, whatever it is.
Yeah, and yet again, it is to protect the system. That's the point here, it is to keep the people in power, you know, who are already there. Not necessarily the elected officials, but the people behind them. That's the bigger point. It's about the structure. It's about the blob, as we always like to call them. You know, it is the people in the grey suits that actually pull the levers of power. They don't like the fact that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to start asking who's behind the curtain.
And yet it genuinely, actually, so the more we discuss this as if it's a nothing, it's a really, I think, a serious problem for this country.
Oh, without a doubt.
You know, we have just so long been spoilt with democratic freedom in this country, and we are now genuinely facing, I believe, a government who is prepared to rob us of that. Genuinely believe that.
Yes, but look, at the end of the day, you can sit here all day and people will watch or listen Phil and say, oh, Phil's a conspiracy theorist. You know, abolition of the juries, the national ID cards, non-crime hate incidents, you know, expansion, destruction of free speech, you know, abolition of the elections.
No punishment for people who say stuff that most of the parliamentarians agree with.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you look at all of these things and you think, at the end of the day, what this feels like, for those of us that went to university, it feels like those student union extremists who simply said, if you don't agree with me, you should be banned from talking. That's what it feels like to me.
Oh, I think you're spot on there. I really, really do. But I think the reason that we don't understand what's happening, or a lot of people don't really get it, is because we've lived in the liberal bubble for a very long time. You know, we keep saying that we've lived in a war-free world. I hate to break it, that's not true. You know, I always go back to the Ronald Reagan quote that, you know, freedom is fought through every generation. You know, it's something that you fight for. You can't just, you know, rest on your laurels, and that's what we've done in the UK, because I do actually hold the public accountable for a lot of what's happened. Because, yeah, I hate to say it, but it's not necessarily the migrant that's just hopped off the boat that wanted a free car because he's a bit sad. You know, we have indulged in a lot of things.
I make the point, the vast majority of people live in a dictatorship. Now, I don't care what you believe in terms of gay rights or whatever, but if you are a liberal person, like many of these people that are going out and about protesting, the gay beaches and gay resorts in the Middle East are kept open by a Jewish guy with a machine gun. Now, you like that fact or you do not like that fact, but ultimately, if you're one of these people, Queers for Palestine, the reality is, in almost everywhere in the Middle East, other than Israel, they will string you up. And the reason why these kids don't realise that is because they simply believe that democracy, freedom, free speech, rule of law, property rights is the automatic state of humanity. And ultimately, if only we were nice to Hamas, they would realise that in the end. That's it.
Yeah.
It's just laughable. Even saying that out loud, just it sounds so oxymoronic. It's just unreal. You cannot be nice to people who want to kill you. It's just not possible. If you were to stare, really I say on a trivial level, it's not trivial. I'm trivialising it slightly because I'm bringing it down to sort of much more like sort of one-on-one level. If you were staring a mass murderer in the face, pointing a gun at you, do you really think that being nice to that person is suddenly going to persuade him, maybe I shouldn't be a mass murderer after all? It's insanity.
But when we talk, and we are going to go to a break and come back with more from Pete, but and indeed Phil, but, you know, we've tried that experiment, haven't we? If you bring people over from countries where women's rights are egregiously abused and you stick them in a migrant hotel, give them benefits and tell them not to assault women, they completely ignore that advice and continue doing what they did in the country they came from. More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Uncle Dre's Yule Log with Andre Walker and Pete Barnes. And let me tell you one thing that, Pete, I'm really looking forward to. We have sent Phil Dave off to the cathedral with his camera and we have told him it will be fine. Now let me be absolutely clear, now he's not here, it will not necessarily be fine, right?
It will not be fine.
It will not be fine. We've sent him off, we've told him they'll be absolutely delighted if he goes along and films them all without permission. But Pete, there is some good news, because I've looked up on the production schedule and the good news is that the person ultimately responsible for all visual output now is Phil Dave, right? So if Phil Dave films something that he shouldn't have filmed, then it will be the responsibility of both the person that filmed it, Phil Dave, and the head of visualisation at this time of night, Phil Dave. And so effectively, by going in, he has granted himself permission, and technically speaking, Pete, you and I are not responsible for this. We're not responsible.
Oh,
now,
sorry.
You're in trouble.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know what happened then, but right.
He heard that.
Nope. I don't know what that was, but we're all good.
We have every confidence, don't we, in Phil Dave. OK, look, let's get back to it in a minute. But I want to ask you, you were talking about this year and the way that you've gone from being a contributor to being a bit of a presenter. And I know, obviously, it's just a few shifts to start with. But just remind us, when did you start? Because I think what happened was you filled in for somebody on my show, and then you were so good we immediately sacked you. How's that journey been for you? What has happened in the intervening period?
I could say it's 4 years this year since I first started doing any kind of TV work, to be honest. And I think I filled in on That Was the Woke That Was one week. Somebody was off sick and you were after somebody. I was free and I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And I came in, did the show, really enjoyed it. The thing is, not a single one of you told me I was needed the next week.
No.
No one did. No one told me.
Although the bad news was...
I bet Andre said he was going to tell me and he didn't.
No, I sacked the other guy. So what happened was,
Who was the other guy?
Chuck Tom. Well, we're not going to name who we sacked, are we? Right? It's bad even by my standards. But Chuck said, Andre, you're going to have to sack that guy even though you like him in favour of Pete, which I dutifully did, and that wasn't nice. He yelped like a baby, right? But anyway, I did my duty. Chuck comes back next week going, I forgot to book Pete. Oh, here we go. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I can't believe that we did 100 episodes of that. Over 100 episodes,
I can't believe that the reason why you and I fell out was what you were never told was the stuff that was going in my ear. Stick the cake in Pete's face, he won't mind. Oh. and then when you used to complain after virtually every show, what he would do, he'd go, oh, I told Andre not to do it. That was never true. That was never, ever, ever true. The throw stuff at Pete, attack him live, right?
Yeah, it's quite funny actually. On my kind of memories thing, the thing that came up was when I finally snapped over Elon Musk.
What was
of all things for me to snap? Yeah, it was the one where he became like Person of the Year, and you said he was a bit overrated. And I was just like, I've sat here for over 100 episodes listening to you mumble on, and I was like, I've had enough.
I'll tell you one thing that is quite funny, and for those of you that don't know, Pete and I work incredibly well together, but it's fair to say that at one point it just descended into hatred, right?
Yes,
largely because I'm easily led, and I always got the blame for everything. But it has been an amazing journey. I think the other thing that I'd really like to ask you is this. You know, I don't want to be twee and I don't want to sort of blow our own trumpet, but it just feels to me like if we weren't doing what we were doing here, and we're not the only people that are doing it, there are other channels and, you know, YouTubes and all this sort of thing, it just feels like this government really would be running amok. And now more than ever, it just feels like it is so important to be able to expose what is going on, to turn around and say to somebody, hey, you know, they've abolished the election. And I always think that what we do is not really news. My idea is that you're able to go into the pub on a Friday or Saturday and explain why the government's been bad. But you know, is it me blowing my own trumpet, or is this not vital now?
I think it's more vital than ever. But what I will say, and I go back to what you did with Phil at the end of his segment, was what's your message for the new year? Learn to ask better questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's so important now. We keep asking the most general, banal, kind of obvious questions where there's so much extra we should be diving into. And this is the bit that I always try to kind of go down, is saying that, look, there's the surface level and there's the 12 steps that we got here that we could have cut this off. You know, this has always been my point.
Let's just be clear on something. It is a criminal offence to suggest to give any details of an injunction that is the nature of a super injunction. Injunction is you can't talk about something. The super injunction is you can't talk about. I don't know if there are any super injunctions, but I will say after that thing with Afghanistan, I really, really, really want Parliament to know what those super injunctions are, and I want somebody, I don't know whether which committee or whatever would do it, I think somebody needs to rule whether these super injunctions should be breached.
I don't think they should be able to have. I don't think the government should ever be able to use them. I think there needs to be primary legislation to stop them, to release all of them, and to stop them. Because the idea that the government can use the courts to silence the press and therefore prevent the public from knowing these things is absolutely beyond the pale. And this is the point that we fussed over the migrant side of it, but this for me was the fundamental bit as to why I think it was one of the worst things, because it was about withholding information, particularly when it came to money and it came to national security, all this kind of stuff, and also data handling. Let's not forget about the story of the breach itself.
But as you know, Pete, and many people watching and listening to this perhaps won't know, this company in its various brands, whether that be the Sun, the Times or whatever, are regularly in court challenging injunctions, super injunctions, prohibitions of D-notices, all this sort of stuff. They do that all the time. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the court ruling. I think there's a very, very different thing when it comes to stopping the national parliament debating an important political issue. It's fine for the court to say, look, the Sun newspaper can't print this for whatever reason, but I think it really isn't a major jump to then say the courts are going to tell members of parliament they can't debate a political issue on the grounds that if they did that, people would be very upset about government policy.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely bang on, because it is the idea that who works for who here. That's the big question, really. And I think that's a fundamental definition of the relationship of the citizen and the state. Me and Ian Collins talk about this quite a lot, actually, in terms of that's what's actually happening before us, is your relationship with the government and the state has fundamentally shifted under this government without a mandate to do it.
Do you not feel...
That's the big thing.
Do you not feel... And look, I just want to be clear on this. So obviously... We're not, teenagers, but in historical terms, we're not very old, right? In my lifetime, this country has changed from what used to happen was I used to feel like we had a government. Now you feel ruled, don't you? You feel like in the old days where it used to be, I can do anything I want unless. It's been prohibited. Now you feel like you're permanently being watched. You're always under surveillance, and you are, kind of serf to the government. And I've never felt that before. And once again, you can say that me, age 46, I'm old. But remember something: you're talking about a 1,000-year country, and in the past 15 years, it's changed.
And I think that's because we've turned into a more European-style legal system in terms of you need the law to be allowed to do something, not a law to prevent you from doing something. That has been the big shift. We now have so many rules, so much legislation, that we have become a permissions-based system, which we never were. And that is a big fundamental change that, again, has happened while most people haven't been paying attention. I mean, I do go back to this point that the things happen between general elections. And, we have to start. This is the bit where we engage.
Pete, we're going to have to go to a break and come back to you. Remember, everyone, they have told you for ages that, well, if we don't give these human rights to all these bad people, you won't have human rights either. We were all placed under house arrest during COVID. The right to family life, gone. The right to free assembly, gone. The right to avoiding arbitrary detention, gone. The right to... all gone. The right to an education, gone. The right to see your kids, gone. And as far as I'm concerned, if you could lock me up for 6 months, then, that is not human rights. 0344 499 1000. Please do get in touch, because nobody else has. And we're taking your calls at midnight. Pete is back in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Uncle Dre's Yule Log, and I want to say to you, coming up very, very soon is our live broadcast from Midnight Mass at Southwark Cathedral. We didn't seek permission, but then again, we didn't tell Phil that it was going to be a problem. I told him that it was going to be fine. It will not necessarily be fine. He may well be heaved out by bouncers, but as you know, Pete, I don't care. Pete, I want to say, you've said this is a bad year. I want to tell you something that you, me, and Matt Thornton experienced this year, which really has been my highlight. Matt Thornton is the tech op. I want to just highlight what I think has been the highlight of the year. So as you know, rather than getting an Uber back, I share a car with a producer whose name's Matt, and we get to have a big car that takes us every single night that we work, and I go to Windsor and he goes to Camberley, and the company's very happy because we save money, but we also have a beast of a car. Pete, you know what I'm going to say. The new car arrived and it had a new entertainment system, and let me tell you, it had every channel. Now, when I say it had every channel, we flipped through and it had every channel. Now, some of you are sat there going,
how old are you?
Oh my God, it didn't. Oh, it did. It had every channel, right?
My God.
And I have to say to you, we turned it on as people walked past and saw it. We had to shut the door quickly, going, oh my God, what the hell? But it's fair to say, and how do I say this politely? There were some spirited young ladies on one of the channels. That's all I can say. That's all I can say.
Great telephone operators, you know.
Yes, yes. I have to say, much as it was amusing, I just struggled to understand the logic when BMW sat there and said, what we really need in a BMW 7 Series is that, right? I mean, you know, to be fair, the Crystal Maze, you flick through and suddenly some woman comes on, get her off, get her off, get her off. We're driving around an obscene publication, to quote Alan Partridge.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, indeed. But Pete, that was my highlight of the year. Also, the highlight was showing all the security at the building, which they found highly amusing. But anyway, look, I do want to ask you, because this is a really, really important time for this country, isn't it? And you've now got, I normally give you like a minute to do this, but this kind of is, I know it's not the end of the year, but it feels like kind of, a way to wrap up the year to do this. You know, where are we going with all this? Because I just worry that we've got a completely alien political system, we've got a dysfunctional government, we've got an economy in ruins, we've got, just a political class that are all over the place. We've got, to be fair, the media falling to bits because it's all going bust. I worry, is this country in terminal decline?
I always say that it's collapsed. Because without saying that, you just continue the fall.
Yeah.
You can't build up if you keep falling. So you've got to pick a point and say, this is the bit, and then we engage, which is the key point that we have to take into the new year, and actually try to come up with some answers. Because for the last year, we pointed at things going, that's terrible. That's pretty easy to do. The bigger thing to do is, well, what comes next?
Yes.
That's what we've got to start asking is, we know everything is awful. What are you going to do to fix it? How are you going to fix it? How are you going to pay for it?
I've heard you. I've worked with you quite a lot this year, virtually every single week, probably more than that, actually. And it's fair to say that you believe we are a long way away from that. You believe that as it stands, we have largely failed to identify the problem, systemic problem, and if anybody is talking about a solution, they probably still don't have a clue how to implement it. Now, is that a first summary of your view?
Yeah, I think it is, because too many people do what I call policy in a vacuum. They keep thinking that one thing is the either silver bullet to fix it, or it's just a standalone problem. Everything is connected to each other. So unless we actually have what we call holistic government, in terms of everything goes
Pete,
through
if
change,
you ever use the phrase holistic government again, I will harm you. But anyway,
it's not my word. Okay. It's not my word.
I get that.
This is what it's called. But it's that idea that, you know, everything links to everything, and we've got to start having an education department that speaks to our skills department, that speaks to the economy, the treasury, that speaks to the parliament. You know, everybody's got to talk to each other. Too many mistakes and too many incidents keep falling apart, basically because nobody bothers to pick up the phone or send an email.
But I know this,
because nobody then wants to make a decision.
I know this is crazy, but I worry very greatly that kids who are 13, 14, 15 now will not have the opportunities that we had, because I think they're just stifled by overbearing government, a total inability to innovate in any way, schools that are just far more interested in beating the trans agenda into people than anything else. I think kids have got a real problem.
I agree with that, but for me, it's actually more along the lines of, whilst we're going through an economic change, we're also going through a political change, and more importantly, we're going through the next industrial revolution.
Yeah.
This is the bit I banged on about for a very long time. AI is going to change a lot of things. It's not necessarily going to make people out of work as much as we thought at the beginning, but it is a way in which we interact with technology, the way in which we interact with each other is going to fundamentally change, and the government does not understand that.
Do you remember
it just doesn't get it.
When we were kids and we'd go, I wonder what it was like living through the Industrial Revolution, we now know that every year innovations are coming on. Well, Pete, thank you very much. I don't know whether you're coming back in the next hour, but you're very welcome to. What we might do is we might call you.
I've been awake for a long time and I've done 2 shifts, so no.
OK, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You know, if the Barnes family are watching, we want to say a big hello to them, and indeed just to say to everybody who supports our on-air talent, all the families who watch it all and say that presenter's terrible but you were great, which is what they all do. Hello to all of you. Hello to, what is it, Chris and Gillian, isn't it?
No, Peter and Jill.
Peter and Jill.
Yeah.
OK, so hello to all of you in Oral. Thanks a lot, Pete, for everything you do, and we will see you in the next couple of days. Now, let me tell you, I am very much looking forward to what's coming up after this break, because this is the big one. The totally unauthorised bootleg attendance of Southwark Cathedral, where we will be live at midnight mass. We've sent a guy down who has not got permission. We've told him it'll be fine. We haven't given him a proper camera, and we genuinely think he may well be thumped by security and removed. But that is what is going to make it the greatest piece of television you have ever seen in your life. Do not turn the channel over. Back in a moo.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants, and as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK
across the UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Merry Christmas. This is Uncle Dre's Yule Log. This is the greatest low-budget show on British television. And I want to say to all of you that you can forget your Christmas at King's. You can forget your papal message. You can forget the God Channel. Forget all of that. Because here we are bringing you a British television exclusive in an act of grotesque irresponsibility. We have sent one of our Jewish correspondents, Phil Dave. He doesn't know what to expect. We've sent him to Southwark Cathedral. We have told him that they will be fine with him filming there. They won't be. We've told him that it's fine, that he hasn't got permission. But what we have failed to tell him is that the failure to get permission is something that Southwark Cathedral can sue over, but they'd be suing Phil Dave because he is the one legally responsible. But I will tell you this, whatever you think of this year and whatever you think of me, nobody in Britain has got the guts to go live to a midnight mass, totally unplanned, totally unscripted, totally without permission. Phil Dave, what's going on?
Well, there is no midnight mass. I didn't realise.
What?
I'm being absolutely serious. I'm standing outside Southwark Cathedral now as we speak. You may be able to see it in the backdrop there. And there is no midnight mass.
Phil, find some religious folk, right? There must be a house for the bishop. Go to the bishop's door, bang on the door, and demand some sort of ecclesiastical televisual event, right? We're in too far now.
The problem is they had a Eucharist at 10 o'clock, but that's now finished, and the next service isn't until 8:30 this morning now. Because of course it's
well, okay. Look, are you willing to stay there till 8:30?
Which might I say Merry Christmas.
Also, they'll start setting up about 6 or 7 in the morning. Look, Phil, I have to say, this is the most Chris Kamara thing I've ever seen on this channel. Phil, I'm not joking. Find a religious person. Find someone, right? Get walking.
Joking. It's freezing out here. I'm not going to get hypothermia for you. Hang on.
Find a religious person. There must be a nun or something somewhere.
There's literally no one here.
Just knock on the bishop's door. Just claim to be a local tramp or something. Demand
the bishop might be in his PJs. I'm not going to do that.
Doesn't matter. If you knock on the door and pretend to be a tramp, he'll give you a cup of tea or some soup, and then you can slip in.
There's no one around.
No, right. The cathedral will have a house for the bishop. Find the house, right? Just walk round until you find the house. If you persuade them you're a tramp, they'll be forced to give you some food. Then, as you're eating the food, he'll ask you how you are, mention you're a correspondent from talkTV. That's how to get the interview, right?
This is completely rhetorical.
Just rip your clothes or something. Don't worry, or smear some muck on your face. Look, there must be some mud on the floor, right? Just put some gravel on your head or something.
Mud on the floor, but I'm not spreading that.
Right, no, just roll in the muck or something. Phil, you have promised us the ecclesiastical televisual event of the year. Look, that's a door. Knock on that door. What is that? Just knock on his door, Phil. Look, no, it doesn't matter. He'll be in there. He'll be asleep. Just bang on his door. There'll be a big bell. Go for that. Tell him you're a tramp. Demand some soup.
It's right. Yes, it's the cathedral office. There's no one in there.
Yeah, but just bang on something. Phil, I've been bigging this up for the past 20 minutes, right? I mean,
what are you
yeah, right, can I just ask you this question? When you suggested going to midnight mass, why didn't you check? No, I'll tell you what we can do. Should we put him in a taxi to the Brompton Oratory? Right, I'm not joking. I'm not joking, right? I think you should do the 3 hours of Latin. Phil Dave, are you willing to get a taxi to the Brompton Oratory?
No.
Oh.
I don't mean to be horrible, but I mean, it's freezing out here, and also I'd quite like to get some sleep at some point.
Well, I have to say, Phil, that was...
There's no one around.
Merry Christmas. Well done.
Oh, there you go. Well, there's someone. But it's
Phil, that was
it's
at
the weirdest
best.
thing. I've never seen London so quiet.
That's why if you shouted for the bishop, just go, Bishop, I need you! I need you!
What do you think? You know what? I just need some sort of divine intervention here or something.
Phil, look, I know you're Jewish, but the rule is there's got to be room at the inn. He'll at least give you like a manger to sleep in or something like that, right? You know, get yourself in the hay.
There's a wheelie bin over there.
Yeah, sleep in the wheelie bin. If you sleep in the wheelie bin, that will be your contribution to understanding the trials and tribulations of Jesus' family on the night of his birth.
I've come a bit far since then. I don't really need to go away in a manger, do I?
Phil, I have to say to you, you've been an amazingly good sport. We didn't actually know that Southern Cathedral was closed, although I have to say...
I have a clue.
When I discovered a moment ago, I thought that is probably for the best, given what might have happened appearing without any permission. Phil, thank you for being an incredibly good sport. I personally wanted him to go and watch the Latin Mass, but then again... I'm me. Okay, right, why don't we go to the calls? Look, can I be totally honest with you? You can call about absolutely anything. I guarantee you that the team in tonight are not team diligent, the team so desperate for money they'd do anything. So, you know, you can phone up and say anything you want within reason. You can talk about the fact that this is a great night for you. You can talk about the thing that I believe is the most important, my belief and love for Father Christmas, because I believe that millions of people have put an enormous amount of effort to ensure that Father Christmas will arrive. And I'll tell you, for most parents, that's going to be in 3 hours' time. But yeah, you can talk about absolutely everything. But what I would say to you is, and I've never said this before, we've got 8 slots on the phone. Very few people have called in. 0344 499 1000. You'll have loads of time. Georgina, you are on talk.
Well, I have called in, and I've called in to say a very happy Christmas, and I have just been laughing so hard with Phil Day.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I really thought that I thought if it is open and he goes in and starts filming, he's going to get arrested.
Yeah, no, he would have actually. Can I tell you something that we didn't tell him? They would have grabbed him and mauled him properly.
Oh, they would have actually frog marched him out. I was hooting, laughing.
And if he'd have said, I'm filming live on talkTV, he would have poured petrol all over the whole thing. He would have made it 50 times worse.
Honestly, he would have had a pyre outside the cathedral. Honestly,
you know what?
I was laughing so hard.
Georgina, can I ask you this question?
You can.
I get into trouble quite a lot because honestly, I cause trouble in the building. As an example, there's a sculpture outside, and I claimed that it was a sculpture of Jeremy Kyle, and that he'd won a competition to be sculpted, right? And opposite him is Julia Hartley Brewer, right? Just made it up. It went round the whole building. So, but. Do you think I've dodged a bullet tonight? Because if he'd have upset them,
honestly, he would have been spending Christmas Eve in the Nick.
Can you imagine?
Honestly, you've dodged a missile.
If we'd have ended up with Phil Dave in the drunk tank, that would have been absolutely superb. And do you know what I would have done? You don't know me. If Phil Dave, as a result of something I'd encouraged him to do, had ended up in prison, I'd have just laughed, right?
Well, that is you all over, but did you see that poor guy's face? He was panicking. It was like silent panic all over his little face. Honestly, I felt so sorry for him. And then when you said, well, go over to the oratory and have 3 hours of midnight mass, honestly,
oh God, you know, I don't want to be awful, but you know one of my problems with the Brompton Oratory, right? I went over there once, and Tuesday was converting to Christianity, and it's not his godfather, it's his sponsor, because obviously he's an adult. But I don't know if you know Tuesday, the YouTuber. And when they did sort of and I was explaining to him some of the stuff about Catholicism and whatever, and the church, and this woman walks up and went, "Excuse me, do you know it's a sin to talk in church?" I went, "No, it's not." And she went, "What?"
Well, it actually isn't.
It's not. I said, "It isn't." I said, "Look," I said, "at least come over and have a go at me with something that's correct."
Absolutely. Well, do you know what they say, Andre? They say that ignorance is bliss, and you can't argue with stupid. So with people like that, my darling, just smile and wave.
I think one of the problems that irritates me sometimes about religion is that there are some people there to prove how much better they are than everybody else. I think that's not true of most people. I think most people put in a genuine effort. But, like, you know, the expert ones, you always think, oh, God, they're going to be a bit dodgy, aren't they?
Well, they know it all and know sweet Fanny Adams. But like you say, I've met a lot of people like that, and I just sit and be quiet and listen, because you don't learn anything by talking. So that's the time to be silent, because you're just wasting your time arguing with people who are only interested in the sound of their own
but
voice.
what you forget is, obviously, I'm required to comply with some broadcasting standards. But if you come over for an argument with me, I guarantee about 30 seconds later, you will be deeply offended by what I say.
You know what, Andre? I've watched you for a long time, and I don't know whether you've ever seen Monty Python, where he's the knight, and he gets his legs chopped off, and he still keeps going back, and then he gets his arms chopped off, and he still keeps going back to attack. And in the end, he said, well, it's fine, I'll just bite you, because he's got no arms and no legs. Well, you are that man, because no matter, if someone came at you with a stick, you'd come back with a bigger stick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's the type of guy I've got you down as. But that is a good way to be, because you're a fighter, and there's nothing better than someone who will fight their corner.
I think that's right, actually. And you know, as we reflect on kind of the year and whatever, one of the things I think is a big mistake in British media is this, and it's quite often true, particularly on our side, where people in private go, oh God, I can't stand the audience, oh, he's a plonker, there's a moron, whatever. As you know, because people walk up to me, I literally go into pubs and talk to the viewers and listeners. I genuinely like all of you, and I like being able to at least partly represent you. And I just think that what is the point in sitting in my seat if you think the audience are morons or they're stupid or you don't politically agree with them? No point, you're wasting time.
You would not be sat in that seat if you weren't the kind of person who could converse with everybody, because you wouldn't be able to do your job. And it does. Sweetheart, I've watched you so many. You know what I'm like. I'm ringing all the time. I'm a little.
Are you a Scouser, by the way?
I was born in Liverpool. Yeah.
Whereabouts?
I was born in Huyton.
Oh, can I tell you a story? Can I tell you a story?
Is it about the eagle and child by any chance?
It's not, but I'll tell you what, let's just be clear about one thing. The eagle and child is not the Garden of Eden, is it? Let's just be clear. So I will tell you, I got into trouble because when I did my postgraduate in journalism, and you had to do a final project. My two final projects was that I joined the Kosovan Serb militia in Serb-controlled northern Kosovo. Right, and they went, you cannot join a Serbian terror force and induce them, which I did. And the other thing was I infiltrated a drug smuggling gang as my other thing, right? And the kind of university were quite shocked by this. But anyway, that was what I did for my project. I've been to Colombia and met Farkist insurgents. I've been out with the Israeli Defense Force in the Golan Heights. I went to Gaza recently. I ran toys, as you know, into Ukraine. Remember, we can't describe the drones as anything other than toys for legal reasons, but I ran that into Ukraine. I came face to face with all sorts of militia, and I will tell you, the only time in my career I've been evacuated by security was on a visit to Huyton in Liverpool. You know that street that they reckon is the roughest street in Europe, right? We went in there, and I had to be put in the van and driven away. Right.
Oh my God! I tell you something. I'm feeling your pain. I was only there for a very, very short time, and then my family moved, obviously for safety reasons. And we moved to Shropshire, and then I was schooled. You know, I had really good schooling and what have you. So it was great, but I never forget, you know, when I was little, going to the Old Swan. Do you remember the Old Swan?
Oh, I know the Old Swan, yeah.
Oh, my God. I
went to school at St Edward's College in West Derby.
No.
Do you not know that?
Seriously, I didn't know that. Holy Grail, what a small world. I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And my mum, I don't know how old you are, my mum went to Larsages, which was the Catholic all-girls school, knocked down probably before you were kind of conscious of it.
Well, I went to Cowley all-girls school.
Oh, really? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I went to Cowley. Oh, my God. Unbelievable. Well, I'm probably not much... Well, I'm probably a little bit older than your mum, I would think.
Oh, really?
I would think so, yeah. Yeah, because you're only younger. How old are you?
No, I'm 46. My mum would have been 78 a couple of hours.
I've got a son of 43, so I'm probably older than your mum. Yeah.
Can I tell you another cracking story? Right. So I joined the Foreign Press Association when I worked for the New York Observer, and the reason is because every single member of the Foreign Press Association is entitled to a pass to both Parliament and Downing Street, right? And I claimed this pass, right? And they didn't want to give it to me because they were like, oh, we don't want all 200 people claiming it. Well, I've already got the security clearance, so they give it to me, right? Yeah. So at this point, I am very much trying to pretend to be a foreign correspondent. That's not the easiest thing in the world to do, even though I work for the New York Observer. So we got this message out to the foreign press, and they went, right. They went, we want an American journalist to come on a trip, a fact-finding mission. So I volunteered.
Did you turn American by any chance? Did you turn American? Did you turn American accent?
No, I didn't use the American accent. I went, I am an American journalist. I work for the New York Observer, and I volunteered, and the trip was to Liverpool. Now, just to understand this, my family owned a shop by the docks, right? Me and my brothers all went to St Edward's College, which is virtually, it's not actually, but it's virtually the Liverpool Cathedral School, right? All of my mates are from Liverpool. I know the place like the back of my hand, even though I'm not a Scouser. And of course, I had to pretend not to have seen any of this stuff as Visit Liverpool took me for the tour. And literally, they're going, this bit is that. And, you know, they were doing a tour of the cathedral. My brother was a chorister. And I'm going, oh, this is very interesting. I understand they call it Paddy's Wigwam. And literally, and when they kept saying to me, you sound like you're from the Northwest, I go, no, not really. I'm from Windsor. My family used to be from round here. But literally, the one place in the world, they give me a tour of Liverpool. I had to pretend.
Oh, my God. I'll tell you something. You're in the right place, let me tell you, because you are an actor. You really are. You should have been in films.
No, I am. Have you heard about You've not heard about my film?
No.
I'm not joking. My film.
Come on. Seriously?
Right? The Force, the Michael Watson story, is a new film about the fight between Michael Watson and Chris Eubank. And I play Gary Newbon, the interviewer.
No.
Yes.
Is the film out? Is it out?
Not yet. We reckon it's going to be out in the spring. And we finished filming. We filmed in a place called Longcross, right? Yeah. Near Ascot. I didn't know what went down in Longcross, but it was amazing.
Oh my God!
We filmed it all, and Frank Bruno was in it. And who else? Who other people? Do you remember that guy who was the street sweeper from EastEnders? His name is Mo George. He's in it.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was great.
Sweetheart, honest to God, I've always thought you was a consummate actor. You sort of jump into any role, and you see that when you're talking on the television. You like switch personas from being like really serious, and then you can be really jovial, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
I think a lot of it. Honestly, and I don't want to be disparaging to our very good friends from the rest of the British Isles, but I honestly think that the Irish storytelling tradition is just a huge advantage for those people that have it. If you look at a lot of the stand-up comedians, whether it be Frankie Boyle, Peter Kay, Jimmy Carr, all the parents are Irish.
Yeah, well, you've got Irish parentage as well, haven't you?
Well, it's a bit funny because my mum is a Catholic from Belfast, so in that sense, she's Irish, but she's not from the Republic.
Oh my! Well, I've got family in Ireland, in County Westmeath, in Southern Ireland.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My father lived in Ireland. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to have to get rid of you in a second, but just tell us a little bit about what Christmas is for you, what you're going to be up to.
Oh, well, I have been baking, I'm not even joking, from 7 o'clock this morning. I've done the turkeys all done, I've done the house from top to bottom.
Oh, Asher's baking as well, believe me. Believe me. He's baking for Christmas, trust me.
I love it. So I've done all the bread, I've done scones, I've done mince pies, I've done sausage rolls, I've done a quiche. I've done everything, and I've loved.
Can I ask you this question? Yes. What is better, turkey dinner or the turkey curry the following day?
I just like all of it.
Do you?
All of it. Honestly, anything with turkey in, I'm there. I love turkey. I love it. As long as people don't talk turkey to me, I'm okay.
I think it's good. As long as your turkey's not dry, it's all a great thing. Okay, well, thank you so much for being a viewer. Thank you so much for being a listener, and I will see you very soon. We'll be back with more. By the way, loads of time to talk to me now. I'm taking it cash. Well, I'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, this is Uncle Dre's Yule log. I think it was Carol in Manchester who's been in touch to say she actually likes me, which is, you know, an unusual thing. I think that what I just want to say to you more than anything else, because of the way I am, and I'm sorry to say this, you've got no idea the number of people have outraged in this building, right? You know, there's been a number of occasions, lest we forget, when there were entire floors that I had to hide from, or that time when I couldn't go to the makeup room because I'd offended so many people, or that time where every single person in the entire department made a complaint about me. Oh, lest we forget all of those. But I just think, you know, you've got to get with the humour, haven't you? And I think that some of those people, you know, just took some of my jokes a bit too seriously. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so we've got the Santa tracker now. Let's see where he is. Now, as you know, even though he hasn't got a visa for every country, he is allowed to go in. There he is. And, you know, as I say, and I keep repeating this, that absolutely everyone should believe in Father Christmas, simply because, you know, what has happened tonight right across this country is a genuine miracle. And I know that people have scrimped, I know that people have saved, I know that people have made sacrifices, I know that people have panicked, I know that people have put in, but it's all going to be worth it in what I think is probably about 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours time is when all the kids are going to get up. But Father Christmas has not been yet, because we are told that he is over the Sandwich Islands. He hasn't stopped there. Not really worth stopping, if I'm being totally honest. But anyway, okay, I just want to say that Zarina has been in touch to say, Andre, you are a very intelligent man, but you go too far sometimes. And she appeared to find it very, very funny. OK, lots of people are saying the worst thing about this year is Keir Starmer. A number of you have been in touch to just lament what would have happened to Phil Dave if he had made it into Southwark Cathedral, and to point out that I was grossly irresponsible to tell him he'd be allowed to do that. But always remember, he was the man ultimately legally responsible for the output, and therefore, if it had gone wrong, I would have been fully exonerated in any investigation, and Dave would have been the person to both get sued and be blamed. OK, so let's go to Grace. Grace, how are you?
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm just contemplating whether I can eat this whilst you talk. OK, I'm going to try it, but it is quite caramelly, so you're going to have to give me at least. So you're going to have to talk for at least a minute. Go for it.
I could probably talk the hind leg off a donkey, although the donkey needs his hind legs to get Mary to Bethlehem. I was really frustrated by this story about the Father Christmas that's supposedly too white and too male, partly because, indeed, it's not helpful to demonise people for being white or male, but also because I'm actually really concerned about the lingering effects of colonialism. I'm really concerned about the fact that there's so much wealth continuing to be extracted from the global south, far more than is given in aid in the opposite direction. Why are these people not talking about things like that? Why are they not talking about the multinational corporations that are still exploiting people in the global south?
I put my honest answer to that, Grace, is I just think it's easier to talk garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said this before, Grace, that, people are talking about, is Sir Thomas Guy a slave owner, filming it on a phone made by a 9-year-old? Then you just think,
no, you're so right.
The reason you are pulling this statue down or throwing stuff at it is because it is easier to face up to the real issues of today. It's just easier.
Yeah, you're so right. And I wish people would face up to the real issues because, as you said, there are some people within the supply chains of our devices who are really mistreated. There are people in the supply chains of our chocolate who are mistreated. We know that people in the Xinjiang region, people are being grossly exploited, and we're not hearing about those things. We're not hearing about global debt through which some of our banks are sucking wealth out of poor countries. Instead, we've got people trying to kind of grandstand by having a moan about Father Christmas. It's just it's really frustrating.
Just a matter of interest. So obviously, I know you come from a Christian background. That's great and important. Do you think that there are too many distractions around Christmas?
Yes, absolutely. I think that commercialism generally has had such a huge impact in so many ways on our society. I think it's part of the reason that a lot of people feel that they are entitled to certain things because adverts have been telling us that from birth. And I think that culture around advertising and showing people you must have all of these things on the Christmas table is making some people feel much more stressed at Christmas than is necessary. There wasn't a lavish feast and there weren't lots of decorations when Jesus was in an animal shelter. And it is genuinely, actually, I know it sounds mad to people who don't believe, but it is actually quite joyful and exciting to just reflect on him, to contemplate Jesus, more than it is actually to have really
but one of the things, and I don't think this is especially at this time of year, but it seems to me that we've brought up an entire generation of kids to kind of have to believe in consumerism as a kind of religion or quasi-religion, to sort of say to yourself, well, real happiness is a Lamborghini. Now look, at the end of the day, when I say a Lamborghini, I'm not having a go at a Lamborghini. If you want to drive fast or you like track days, buy a Lamborghini if you can afford one. But the fundamental point is, it is not going to make you a better person, right?
Absolutely.
And what worries me is that you have people. I mean, if you look at, say, the this whole going on TV, Big Brother and all this sort of thing, reality TV, you get people who just want to be famous for the sake of it and really just make a fool of themselves because of their desperation. Now, I believe they're being exploited, by the way, and they're not the villains. But you sit there, I mean, I remember Elton John saying this. He said, you know what, the big disadvantage of my job is, in order to do it, I have to be a rock star, megastar. Right? So you think, his interest in life is to play music that people enjoy, write and compose music that people enjoy. The downside is he has to be one of the most famous men on the planet. And I think that's a much better way of looking at it, because what he's interested in is his skill, his talent for music. What he's not interested in, and I know he falls foul of this quite a lot, is the adulation and nonsense.
His song with Ed Sheeran, his Christmas song with Ed Sheeran, has been stuck in my head like an earworm all day long. I think we're kind of all craving to feel that we're significant to some extent, even if we don't admit it to ourselves. And we're kind of craving feeling that we're somehow good and righteous in some way. And some people, they evidence that by marching on certain protests, and other people maybe by buying things to show off, because that's what they feel is a admirable thing to do, is to have expensive things. But Jesus, though he's divine, he came down to be born amongst us in really humble circumstances, because human beings in ourselves are valuable to God, even if we don't have status and fame, and we don't actually become.
But if let's live in the real world, right?
Yeah.
In reality, and we don't know for sure, but we're fairly certain that Jesus attended the University of Qumran, and where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and that accounts for the fact that he, there was a huge gap in his life where he sort of wasn't heard of. The assumption is, and it's not guaranteed, is that he was studying at the rabbinical college, which you could roughly call the University of Qumran. But from his point of view, if you think about it, his interest was in spreading the word of God, whether you believe he's the Son of God or not. In a sense, is irrelevant to this bit of it. And he spent, probably from being quite a small child to the age of 30, studying the Bible, understanding its context, and whether you believe that he's the Son of God or not, when he arrived in Jerusalem, the man knew what he was talking about. He put in the work. I know it sounds stupid to talk about Jesus in these terms, but he put in the work, and so in his chosen skill, which was spreading the word of God, rather than turning up like some pop star or somebody off Big Brother, he actually came with the tools he needed to actually do things properly.
That's a very good point. And also, ultimately, he sacrificed himself. He wasn't going around trying to get himself. I mean, it's a completely different context, but nowadays we're very cynical about a lot of things, because we know that a lot of people are doing things for money and they're doing things for status. Jesus suffered beyond what we can imagine. I think he suffered metaphysically because our sin was placed upon him, but at least he suffered the physical pain of crucifixion. And so there's nothing in it for him. But he
there is absolutely no doubt that time and time again, if what he'd have done was either back down or gone along with the kind of rabbinic class, then he'd have had quite a good life. I mean, a man of that level of talent, imagine he hadn't bothered talking about being the Son of God. Imagine he hadn't bothered turning over the money changers' tables and all that. Imagine he'd just gone in with the scribes and the Pharisees. I suspect that he would have been the equivalent of, say, the sort of 150 grand a year type person that you would see today.
Yeah, and I think it's hard for us to get our head around supernatural things. I really struggle to get my head around supernatural things. But it's hard to see why he would have fabricated his claims, or why his followers who were being killed for sharing the news about him having risen would have fabricated it. Because unlike today, there weren't book deals to be had. There weren't jobs in the film industry that they could attain by becoming successful and well known, and yet they shared the news of him rising, and we have hope because of that. And I think that there's hope.
But if you were to, I always think it's a bit weird when people sort of say, "Oh, there's no proof that people like Jesus and Muhammad exist" and all that sort of thing. I'm not into that game. I think it's a bit silly. Obviously,
don't take it seriously.
Obviously, my understanding is the record of the execution of Jesus actually does exist in Roman records. But anyway, I've often thought about Jesus that if you were to not believe that he was the Son of God, if you don't believe in the resurrection, if you don't believe in the ascendance into heaven, but nonetheless you read his teachings, actually, you won't go that far wrong anyway. Yeah,
I mean, I do think that it's of endless significance whether or not a person chooses to turn to him repentantly. But you're right, his teachings are also fundamentally important. They've completely transformed our society to the extent that we don't realise it because we're so used to it. So many things that we think of as normal were not normal before Jesus' teachings reached our society. And I think part of the reason that people are feeling a sense of meaningless now, and also that there's more crime and things now, is that some of that is being eroded. And indeed, yes, he gives guidance that chimes with what we.
But we are, and I appreciate sometimes people go, "We," it's not me, and it's not you and me either. But if you say to children, learning a skill, doing something properly is of no value. What's of value is the quick book. What's of value is the Instagram lifestyle. What's of value is the big cars and the expensive hotels and all that sort of thing. Then, you can't fault them for doing it. Always remember one thing about me, and people can say, Andre's done this, Andre's done that. Remember, I went to university and spent my entire time, to the detriment of my course, it has to be said, practicing university debating, and I got to the grand final of the European Championships.
Congratulations.
Now you can say good things or bad things about me, but the reality is my trade, if you like, which is debating, I've studied for a significant amount of time. If you put me on the TV to debate someone, I'm not lost like some reality guy who's just been plucked from the pub. I can actually do it. And I think time and time again, I look at this and I think to myself, I will never, not be poor, I will never be out of cash. There'll always be opportunities for me because I've got a skill that I can use. But we don't tell kids to do that.
Yeah, again, I think there's this urgency that's kind of enforced upon people to seek easy ways of feeling positively about themselves. And Jesus is actually saying that God loves us even though we might not feel that we're successful or intelligent. We're valuable irrespective of how many followers we have online. And it's actually what Jesus has done for us that matters rather than what we can achieve in terms of success on Instagram.
But do you not think the other central message of Jesus, which I think cuts through all of it, is to say, don't get in the rat race with other people, try and be as good as you can. Because if you look to the side and go, is that person younger, slimmer, more intelligent, richer, you'll just drive yourself mad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to try to learn not to compare oneself with others, but also that, again, we can't be good enough. We're always going to be less successful than someone else in one way or another.
Yeah.
And Jesus is saying that we're loved by God and we have the opportunity to turn to him even though we may not be as successful or we may have really messed up in one way or another.
But if you remember...
He's offering us that salvation either way.
If you remember one of the most genuinely torturous books, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, probably the most intelligent man that's ever lived, and he wrote the book Meditations to himself. And one of the points he makes is this. I'm only partially quoting, but he says, don't respect an emperor for being an emperor and don't disrespect a slave for being a slave, for this is the position that they were given in life. Respect a good emperor and respect a good slave. Do not respect a bad emperor. And the point that Aurelius makes is very simply this. At the end of the day, I've not been born to be the king of this country. I'm not going to suck up to somebody just because of their status in life. If they do a good job as being king, then great. And if somebody does a good job as being a street sweeper, then, great. I would respect that person. Yeah, well, I mean, this is a kind of a big part of the Christmas narrative is that Jesus came to really humble people. This young woman and a man who worked in manual labour are considered to be significant enough that the Son of God is born incarnate to them, and the shepherds are the first people who get to come and visit. It's not. Although, Grace, I'm going to go to a break and come back. I will say one thing. I'm sorry to say this. In that time in what is modern day Israel, being a carpenter was quite a middle class job. Anyway, back in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Do you know something? I absolutely love working at this place, and I genuinely think that this channel goes from strength to strength. I don't think we always get everything right, but I'll tell you something. You know, if you tune in here, you will get what I think is important, which is an ability to think about some of the big issues of the day and understand. And I would say the benchmark that I've got is I want you, by the end of my show, to have a few things that you can say down the pub that are just quite interesting. I think that's really important. Anyway, Grace, I blew apart your carpenter thing, but anyway, I didn't mean to be rude.
Okay, no, that's fine. I think I'm trying to make the point that whereas Jesus has divinity and he was up in heaven with endless splendor, he came down to earth and walked among us. And in doing so, God is showing us that as human beings, we're precious to him, even if we don't have the fame and status that our society might suggest we ought to have. And Jesus showed compassion for people who were looked down upon in a way that we now know is the right thing to do, because Christian values have been so ingrained in our society. We know now that the right thing is to treat people with respect, even if they're not massively successful or wealthy or what have you. But in that time, it was not necessarily quite so obvious. And again, Christian values have really shaped our society. But I think it's good when adverts are telling us we need to have elaborate Christmas meals.
Do you know something? So my best mate is from the former Soviet Union, and what he kind of says to me is this: we always have this argument. He believes that being polite to staff in the hotels or restaurants is really bad form and makes you look like you don't know what, you're not used to being in posh places. And I make the point, in Britain, it's horrendous to be rude to the waiting staff, but like different countries are different. Mind you, to be fair, in Eastern Europe, they're rude to everyone, even their own family, right? They just ain't got politeness yet. But anyway, they don't mean to be. But I always think if you're going to, if somebody's going to bring you some food in a restaurant, you ought to thank them for doing it, even if you have paid them.
I haven't. I cannot remember the last time I went to a restaurant, and when I did, it was my family orchestrating it, so I've not been in a situation of needing to do that. But I do think it's really important that we have respect for others and that we contemplate that we're, fortunate if we're not in a more lowly position, and that we're not any more significant or important than someone in a more lowly position. Although I wouldn't say that waiting staff are in a more lowly position, but I think the point that you're making is that someone might look down upon others. And indeed, I believe that God has made each human.
Well, you see, I come in here, and the staff that I come into contact with who are kind of not journalists or producers or whatever, obviously at this time of night the cleaners are out and about, and there's this guy I think called Alfred, I think his name is. I always say hello to him and have a chat with him and whatever, and there's the security on the door. I've invited them to the football. Now look, at the end of the day, the office needs to be cleaned, the studio needs to be cleaned, so somebody needs to do that job. So that guy's part of the team. And as far as the security guys go, at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, this building is a target. These people are there to keep us alive. Now you can flower that up in whatever way you like, but having a guy whose job it is to keep us alive, I would suggest is quite an important role.
I think one of the things that people can forget about Christianity is that in addition to being called to be empathetic and loving towards others, which is really fundamental, we're also called to have humility rather than pride. And our society really encourages us to be proud of ourselves. But actually, if we focus on Jesus, then we recognize that what we have is a gift, and we are ourselves flawed in one way or another, yet we're offered salvation that we haven't earned. And so we need to have humility rather than thinking with pride about ourselves. So
I've been thinking about this long and hard, by the way, about the word pride, right? Because I actually think, in a sense, we get this slightly wrong. So when a parent says to a child, "I am proud of you," what they mean is that they are pleased, you know, they are pleased with the child's achievement, you know, they are glad to be associated with it, if you like. That is very different to the sort of pride that you're talking about, which is much more like vanity than pride. And I think sometimes the word pride, it needs to be split in two. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There are various words like that. I mean, I think the word love gets completely misused by our culture. If you look at the original Bible text, there are very different words for love, obviously, and nowadays you can, So there are various words that I think need more.
I think I'm going to have to cut you off because we do have to go to a break, but I think probably what I would say is Christians should stop using the word pride as a negative thing and instead say vanity, because I think actually for the most part that's probably a better way of describing it, because the sort of pride which encourages your children and says I'm glad to be associated with you is clearly not the one that the Bible was having to go at. Grace, thank you so much. I'm really, really pleased. We're going to go to a break in a moment, and then we've got Tristan on, who's been a really, really solid supporter of this show, and in the last 10 minutes of the Christmas Eve to Christmas Day show, I'm really pleased that he is coming on. Back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Uncle Dre's Yule Log, and I will say one thing. The vast majority of my viewers and listeners are very, very clever people, but there are one or two people who occasionally display a little bit of naivety. So to the person who's been in touch saying, why have you spun out 2 calls since midnight? Why haven't you given everyone else who called a chance? I just need you to think about that. Just think about that. Why have I spun out 2 calls for 40 minutes rather than going to the other 100 people that phoned? Just think about that for a minute. Think. Yes. Okay, let's go to, I mean, come on. Why have you spun them out? Oh, you're not giving anyone a chance. Am I not? Am I not giving anyone a chance? Do you think that? Okay, Tristan, you are on Talk. How are you, big boy?
Hello, Andre. How are you doing, my friend?
Not bad.
I'm good,
I feared I offended you the other day with talk of the Fatberg.
No, nothing to do with me.
Which has left me bemused.
Nah, that's all right, mate. So I just wanted to say Happy Christmas, obviously, to everybody out there. Nobody forget the true meaning of it, whatever religious background you're from, because obviously mine isn't Christianity. We live in a Christian country, so let's respect that.
Have you been? By the way, Happy Hanukkah. I know it's over. What do you get up to? Because I know that you're similar to Phil Dave in the sense that whilst you are from a Jewish background, you're very patriotic and get involved in all the British things.
Very much so. I just basically had a quiet one, to be honest with you, Andre. Lots going on behind the scenes, but it will be a bigger celebration next year, that's for sure. So, what was I going to say to you? Yes, you sounded like you might be a little bit on the desperate side for phone calls tonight, so I thought I'd ring in.
No, how dare you? I spun out 2 calls for 40 minutes because we were being deluged, obviously. No, to be absolutely honest with you, it doesn't bother me because, the people that phone this show generally are pretty intelligent, and so if you need to talk to them for 20 minutes each, it's still going to be all right. I mean, it's not as good as having 50 people, but who cares? It's all right.
Absolutely, yeah. It's quality that matters, isn't it? So what are you, Andre Walker, up to this Christmas? And are you spending it with Lois Perry like last year?
Let me tell. Right. Actually, I can't tell you this story, but right, I'll tell you what, I will not tell you this story. I will not tell you this story. My best mate is a diabetic. Yeah. And as you know, diabetic medication is the same as Ozempic, right? Yeah. Now, he went to stay at Lois Perry's, right? I am not going to tell you the story, but I think what you can do is put a number of things together there and work out what has happened. No, actually, do you know what? You're going to find out in a couple of weeks, but I won't tell you now. I'm in a horribly, horribly bad mood at the moment, and I haven't put any Christmas decorations up at all. I'm just in a bad mood, and I'm in a bad mood. Well, look, you'll find out pretty soon. But I'm in a bad mood because I believe that some significant changes need to happen in this country, and I think that we are. Look, I won't bore you with the details, but you'll hear relatively soon anyway. So I've cancelled Christmas, but what I am thinking of doing, as I say, my mate is from the former Soviet Union. I'm thinking of jumping on a plane tomorrow and flying off to what is not necessarily the Garden of Eden, but at least the beer's cheap. But I will say one other thing. To be fair, in my defence, Christmas for junior presenters like me, Christmas is a really good opportunity, not just to have more shows, but actually to do more with the shows. And therefore, I'm always very keen to work at Christmas. A few years ago, when I started doing it, and I've done this for years, doing the Christmas Eve show. Before today, like my mum and dad picked me up and I went up north, or I went the following day, and can I be honest with you? I just don't want to do it. It's too much of a hassle. I remember one year my mum and dad picked me up and we got back at 6 a.m. and my mum had to put the turkey on straight away. It was just a mess. No. And so if you say I'm not that bothered about Christmas Day, then it just makes life easier. So what I tend to do is I pop down for church at Windsor Castle. I've already been to the 9 lessons and carols at Windsor Castle. And then, honestly, I decided, even though I've not got decorations or whatever, I bought a half-decent leg of lamb. I'll stick that in and just get on with it. I'm perfectly happy on my own.
Well, as long as that's what you're happy with, that's the important thing. I'm spending on my own as well, so... No,
but I mean, the reason is because I'm working over Christmas, so Christmas is an opportunity for me to do that. I'm not generally just a miserable person. I am a bit.
No, you're not the Grinch.
Also, there is something that may happen tomorrow. I don't know if you know, I'm a part owner of the Windsor and Eton Brewery. The Windsor and Eton Brewery produces, without question, the rarest beer in the world. It is called Russian Imperial Stout. It is currently, this year, they produced 26 bottles of it, of which I've got one. And basically, it was originally made as a beer to be given by British monarchs as a gift to the Russian royal family. I think now the current bottling was first made in 2008 in Windsor, so every bottle now is whatever number of years old. The bottles cost about 40 quid each, and that is for 750 cl. So it's about the price of champagne. It may get destroyed tomorrow.
Oh, you're very proud of your links to Windsor, aren't you?
Yeah, I consider it to be my hometown, even though it's not originally. And you love Southend, which I love Southend as well. I've always loved Essex. Patriotic people.
Yes, very much so. Very, how can I put it? What's the words? It's a very right-wing area.
Oh, yeah. When I worked for the Member of Parliament for Romford, let me tell you, there were things that appeared in letters that generally you would not write.
I can quite believe it.
Anyway, thank you so much, Tristan. I'm going to leave it at that. I just want to say one thing before we go. As you heard in the news, somebody was killed on the roads yesterday. Look, please, please, please be very careful. And also, and I'm not saying anything about the crash that happened yesterday because I don't know what happened. If